heater. It might it might get deafening in here. I might mute that if that's the case,
That's
but right
fine.
now it should be fine. So yeah.
So what is your setup? Do you use an XLR microphone with an interface, or do you have one of those
I
classic Blue Yeti snowballs?
I have a Blue Yeti. I've used that for most of my
No.
videos. Yeah.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
It's the classic one. I actually got an Audio Technica AT2020
I have the exact same
recently.
one.
Oh, sweet deal. I think Mahler said that he uses that one.
It's a
I'm
great
not
mic.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think I was streaming with Southpaw. I originally used the Yeti, and then I just did a switch, and he said that it sounded less grainy. So
Oh yeah, it's
I don't
infinitely
know.
better.
I've
I'm
just been
currently
using
using
that.
my
So.
headset. It's a Cloud HyperX 2. It's all right, but I'm planning to get a Scala interface for it, and like a proper setup. So Evan, tell me a little bit about yourself when it comes to like your background in film.
Uh, I'm just I haven't had too much of an experience in all honesty. I'm going to school now, and
Okay.
I've taken some courses in cinema, and I'd like to be a writer or an editor. That's something which I'm interested in, and obviously I'm making the videos. That's something I enjoy. It's something that I'm a hands-on learner, so
Sure.
that's something that I just enjoy. But that's I just love talking about movies. I love making movies from the little experience I've had, and
Mhm.
it's just something I want to pursue. So yeah.
Nice, nice, nice. What are you going to school for?
I'm studying communications with an
Okay.
emphasis in cinema.
Nice, nice.
So.
That is awesome. I'm just a dude who just likes critically thinking about things. And honestly, was I started thinking critically about things. I guess you could say AVGN like a long time ago. I was like thinking like, oh yeah, like things can be bad. By the way, I'm pulling up the watch together right now. I'm live, by the way. Hang on, what was that series called? Counter arguments.
Yeah, yeah.
There goes. Counter arguments. Water isn't wet. Have you seen this?
I've seen a little bit of it.
Okay,
I know.
that's
I've
interesting.
heard the debate. It's just something I think is
Okay,
hilarious.
here we go. How to change one's mind. Oh, geez, these have way more views than his other ones do. I think the series is really good. The second one is honestly really cool. So, uh, I guess we can get started on. Wait, hang on. Before I do that, watch together. Boom. There it is. It's doing the. Oh, there we go.
12 Angry Men is
Why
a
won't it
film.
pause? There we go. Okay, watch together.
Have can you throw the link into
I
the chat or?
sure can. There you go. Oh, so this, by the way, this channel, the BFAP, me and one day, I wanted to. It was during Kingdom Hearts 3, and that game like apparently didn't live up to expectations, and there was a lot of people like, I say didn't live up to expectations. Like, yeah, I guess you could say that. I'm not a Kingdom Hearts fan. I don't really like Kingdom Hearts. I've never played it, but apparently like again, it didn't live up to expectations, and a lot of people were getting really butthurt over it, and they were like doing these really pathetic arguments, and me and a couple of people on Mahler's uh, Discord were like, "Hey, anybody want to cover this video that's like defending the game?" And it was like, "Sure." And then we all got together and did a little our own podcast on it, and EFAP style, and then we just have kept this ever since and just kind of use it to talk and stuff. That's the history of this. But as when it comes to the topic at hand, the 12 Angry Men. I've watched the movie in like sixth grade a long time ago in like a music class, and then I watched it again recently with my family, and I absolutely loved it. And what got me to watch it actually is your tweet. Someone said, "Can there be a flawless movie?" And you said, "Yes, 12 Angry Men has no flaws." And I was like, "Interesting. Let's put that to the test." And from I don't know if you've watched it as of recently, but I felt that the beginning was a little too. It took a little too long to get into it. There was a lot of like dead talking that wasn't. It wasn't even just like establishing their characters. It was just kind of just mindless chatter that I was like, okay, this is very 1950s. But
Yeah.
then once the arguments start, the pacing becomes fucking perfect. Um, but
Because it doesn't feel like a film that was like released in the 1950s. Like a lot
oh,
of them have that lightning fast pace with the dialogue, and it doesn't it's hard to follow. It has a unique style, but it's just something that doesn't really translate. Like you can watch 12 Angry Men, and it feels like a movie that could be released today. It's just in black and white. So
I absolutely agree. And apparently there's a 90s adaptation I haven't
Yeah,
seen
I've
it.
heard it's all right. Like I think it was like made for TV. It like has a little bit of a low budget, but I've heard it
Uh,
still worked for what it was. So.
I mean, you don't really need a budget to tell this story, other than for
Oh,
actors. Fun fact: the
yeah.
budget for 12 Angry Men 1957 was, I think, $300,000. I looked it up, and it profited 2 million.
Holy cow! Wow. I don't even know how much the budget probably
Inflation.
went to the actors.
Yeah.
Like Henry Fonda was a pretty big
Yeah,
star
Henry
around then.
Fonda's
So.
awesome.
Yeah.
But getting into the topic itself, how to change one's mind. I mean, you follow me on Twitter, which I'm super grateful for. But I don't, you've probably
Yeah.
seen me talk to a lot of different people, and I recently got into two arguments as of recently, or one argument with two people. I had a tweet that got kind of popular. It was talking about the throne room scene, I think. No. It was about plot holes. Someone was like, someone added Mahler and was like, "Lol, like you take every single plot hole, you take every single account into a movie, like lol," and then. Or no, it was like you think this one thing makes the whole movie bad, and I was like,
Oh, I
well,
hate that argument, man.
yeah.
You're like the laser.
Go
You
ahead,
think
go
that
ahead.
since there's a laser axe by the stormtrooper, that means the Last Jedi is objectively bad. It's like, oh,
Well,
stop.
it's
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 like,
it's one of them, you know. So
yes, it's like things stack up. Just
yeah,
take everything into consideration. Things are bigger than small things. It's like,
yeah.
yeah.
For example, I'm
Oh,
I'm rewatching Avatar: Last Airbender. My sister got it for me for Christmas, and I remember I saw a plot hole where at the very beginning, where Aang goes into the Avatar state to the like at the North Pole, and then the second time he goes into the Avatar state, all of the statues light up, and they're like, "Oh, the Avatar's back!" And it's like, wait, why didn't that happen the first time? Did you just kind of forget? There's an oopsie here, but that's like one like medium-sized one out
is
of.
is hilarious. I rewatched the Clone Wars 2003 series with my younger
Oh,
brother
the 2D one.
recently. Yeah, yeah, I love that one. It's so funny. I watched it, and there's a scene where Anakin is chasing a ship away on a planet, and then the ship is about to go into light speed, and then like Anakin is detecting that, and he has the coordinates in the ship. And my younger
Interesting.
brother, pointed out that doesn't make sense considering The Empire Strikes Back because the Empire had the
Oh.
Millennium Falcon. It went to light speed, and then it was like it was gone.
Oh
Like
yeah,
they
I
made it
remember
clear that
that.
when you go into light speed, essentially you're in the clear, like
Yeah,
they
well, that's
don't
what's been
have light speed
established.
tracking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I said maybe it's because they were on a close course, and it's like he said
Yeah.
the Empire was also really close, and I was like, oh, okay. I'm
Yeah,
like,
is it?
there it is.
Yeah.
Like I was like, lore inconsistency, just one in
Yeah, well, that's
like Clone
argumentation
Wars.
right there. Like literally right there. That's juror number 4. Like, do you have the correct information? Like, okay, then it's over. Like the only way you can dispute that is by having the counter evidence, and that's what makes discourse beautiful. Um, Go
It's
ahead.
interesting to talk about these types of things. No, 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 you go.
So like I remember that like so here's the thing. I rewatched that Clone Wars show a couple years ago, and I remember not liking the second season.
The you mean the micro series, the 2003 one, or
Yeah, the little series, because it went from like little like 10-minute little shorts to like actual like Lucas tier dialogue, and I was just like, ooh, I am not liking this anymore.
you
Do you need
have
to
like
rewatch
the
it?
tribe with the techno union that gets a little bit slow. I never really liked that as much when I was a kid, but yeah,
It's been a long
because
time, but we can probably both get on the same ground that the Clone Wars 3D animated show is like really good.
still haven't seen it,
Oh
unfortunately,
my
man.
god, dude, it's
I've,
great.
I've heard it's like out of order, and like I don't know. I grew up with the 2003 one, and it's kind of like that holds a special place in my heart. But I've heard nothing but good stuff from it. So
Oh yeah, it's really good. I want to actually like talk about real quick. I know we keep going on tangents, but you were talking about oh god, I think it's gone. Yeah, it's gone. I guess we'll get back on topic then. So yeah, originally, so we were talking about the guy was like, yeah, oh, like, lol, you think that, one plot hole makes the whole movie bad? And I had a tweet that kind of blew up a little bit, and he was like, yeah, and I said, well, it depends on what we're talking about. So, if it's, and I mentioned, what did I mention? I mentioned, I think I mentioned Jurassic Park, did I? or the paddock scene. I was like, yeah, that's really dumb that it just randomly becomes a cliffside. But like, how many more from Jurassic Park can you pick? Oh no, that's not what I mentioned. I mentioned Lord of the Rings. I mentioned the car in the background in one shot, and I was like,
Uh,
yes, it's technically an issue. It is a problem, by standard of filmmaking. It's a world building error, but it's not game breaking where you get to the Last Jedi and there's literally a knife that disappears, and you're just like, yeah, that's an issue. And this
I
guy,
use both of those examples in my plot holes video. I'm like, I like the car in the background. That's like that is what I would label a nitpick. You're like, this is
yes,
something
it
which is
is.
like, it's so minuscule. They're like, it affects absolutely nothing
Well,
in the
it's an
film.
issue.
Where you're like,
It is an
yeah,
issue, but
it
it's
is
just
still an issue,
so
but it's
minuscule.
yeah. And then you're like
Point
the
zero zero
Jurassic Park
one.
one. That's a little bit more
Yeah, that's a little bit
substantive. You're
bigger.
like that affects the scene. It's I don't. It's
Well,
a little
stakes
bit in
get
the realm
hurt.
of the disappearing knife, but it's still you're like that's one from Jurassic Park. You're
Yeah,
like there's the rest of the film functions really well. So
yeah, for sure. It's all about like how much the stakes, because like if you get a film that's like keeps like airbrushing knives out, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess there's just our heroes are just gonna be saved by editing, like. But yeah, so anyway, I said, there's levels to this stuff, and then two guys responded at me, and I'm like, let's go. I'm always down for a good hearty discussion. And the
yeah.
entire time they just kept making shit up and strawmanning me. It's like, oh, and like the first one was a whataboutism. It was because I know you've done a video on that, and it was a great video actually. Um, but
Oh, I
the
hate that argument. It's
the
like
first one
probably my
was like,
least favorite last minute defense.
what did he say? He said, oh well, if you don't like the disappearing knife, then you should hate Return of the Jedi because the people aren't shooting at Luke when he is standing there waiting for his lightsaber. And I was like, dude, there's so much wrong with what you just said. Like, I'm like, so anyway, I went back and forth with this guy, and he just continuously kept just making shit up about me, and just like kept strawmanning me, and kept like doing these whataboutism, and kept doing all these non sequiturs, and it got to the point where I eventually was like, dude, I'm done talking to you. Like, if you can't stay on topic and like use text in the film to like dispute your claim, like dispute my claim, then like I'm done talking to you. This is going nowhere. You just keep making shit up. And then a second guy started messaging me and was doing the same thing, just kept making shit up. And then it made me think about juror number four well, juror number 10 and juror number three, and how they obviously had their motives. And they, any time that someone would bring up a good point, they'd be like, "Ah, what's the matter with you? You're making a big deal out of nothing." And then you pointed me to those videos, and I was like, okay, interesting. And I listened to the videos, and I was like, okay, this is some good stuff. But I want to say I had some issues with the first episode. I don't remember them, which is why I want to do the watch together with a scholarly gentleman such as yourself.
Heck yeah. I like I honestly am not too big of a fan of Counter Argument's channel. Like I've
Okay.
seen some of his videos. I think that he does a good job presenting evidence, but I don't think he draws conclusions all that much. I don't think he is as confident in like saying something is as much as he is like presenting almost like different ideas.
Oh,
That's just with
okay.
a lot of his, but I'm a fan of a lot. Like I saw some of the 12 Angry Men videos. I don't think I saw all of them, but I remember I saw
They're
one or
pretty
two.
good.
I'm like, this is actually really good stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, Mahler in his I want to say his Dark Souls series, which is a fun fact where I first got onto Mahler, where he listed out. Yeah, it was because he was talking about the guy he was responding to, not H bomber guy, Matthew Matosis. He was like, yeah, me and Matt use a very simple process called PEC, point evidence conclusion, and I think you were saying that not folding ideas. What is this guy's name?
arguments.
Counter arguments. um, was you said he can't really like draw conclusions very well. He's good at like pointing out the evidence, but then he just like doesn't like cinch the knot. Is what you're saying?
A little bit. I need to see more of his channel to
Okay,
make that conclusion, but just from what I've seen, that was kind of my takeaway. But yeah, I don't know.
fair enough. Okay, but would you like to get started?
100%. Let's get going.
All right, let's do it.
12 Angry Men is a film about a jury deciding the guilt of an 18-year-old boy on trial for murdering his father. Their verdict, whether guilty or not guilty, must be unanimous, and if they find the defendant guilty, he will be given the death penalty. In the beginning of this film, all members of the jury vote guilty. all but one. By the end of this film, all 11 jurors who voted guilty have changed their vote to not guilty. What happens between these two moments is one of the greatest cinematic exhibitions of human psychology. If you've ever wanted to learn how to argue effectively, how to communicate your reasoning, question the reasoning of others, and win them over to your way of thinking, 1957's 12 Angry Men is something to be studied. What makes 12 Angry Men a great film to study regarding argumentation is the fact that these characters, by virtue of being on a jury, do not have the luxury of agreeing to disagree. They must agree on the matter at hand unanimously. Also, by virtue of them being on a jury, none of them know each other personally, and nothing personal is meant to be at stake. They are simply tasked with determining the truth. For all intents and purposes, the protagonist in this picture is juror number 8. He is the strongest advocate of acquittal and the first man to vote not guilty. The antagonist in this picture is juror number 3. He is the strongest advocate of a guilty verdict and the
stop right here. Yeah, I'm going to I'm going to pull up Twitch chat, and then I didn't even spread my link around that I'm fucking streaming. Hang on a second. Yeah, like, I just realized, like, yeah, I might want to do that. RAMSAUR. Is it Ramsar X? Yes, it is. Nope.
Could do that with mine, too. Do you just go to the link at the top, the twitchtv.ramsar, or?
Yes, there it is. Copy link. I'm going to tweet it. Dude, the fact that you don't have more, like, Twitter followers is insane to me. Your videos are so, believably good. And it's just like, wow, like, I just play fighting games. Like I compete in fighting games for tournaments. So does Cad, another guy in our in this Discord, and like I guess that's where I got a decent amount of followers. But like, dude, it's like unreal. Like that you don't have more followers and more subscribers. Me and at Evan Monroe talking about 12 Angry Men and argumentation styles. Come join. Exclamation mark. I'm gonna grab the tweet and throw it in some discords. Throw it in that Discord. Oh, right. And then I'm gonna pull up Twitch chat. Chat settings. Let's see. How do you? I'm trying to figure out how to pull chat directly. Looks like. Hang on. Do you know how to?
Look at me, man. I never have used Twitch. I barely know how to use it at all.
There used to be on the settings like how. Hang on. You used to be able to like pull Twitch chat directly into a different into its own, like, what am I trying to say? Into its own thing. That's really interesting. Why isn't it? Oh, here we go. I've got it on OBS. OSB. That's a type of plywood. Okay, I've got Twitch chat. I just need to pull up OBS. Okay, that's good. Oh, hang on. Chat settings. There we go. Okay, back to it. Shit. You ready?
Last man to vote not guilty. In the beginning, number 8 is alone. Everyone else seems to be convinced that the boy on trial is guilty. And not only does he appear to have no arguments, even he isn't sure that the boy is not guilty. And yet, this is the man responsible for changing the jury's verdict. In the end, number 3 stands alone. Everyone else has been convinced that the boy is not guilty. How does this happen? How is this one man able to convince the other 11 to change their minds? Especially given the fact that he initially claimed he wasn't trying to change anybody's mind.
Couldn't change my mind if you talked for 100 years.
I'm not trying to change your mind. It's just that we're talking about somebody's life here. We can't decide it in 5 minutes, supposing we're wrong.
Supposing we're wrong. Supposing this whole building should fall down on my head. You can suppose anything.
All right, I think I'll stop here first to talk about something a little personal. You may have seen my tweets, but juror number 7 he's not number 7. I can't remember what number he is, but I want to say he's number 7. Yeah, he's number 7 because he's right after Henry Fonda, right before Henry Fonda.
I think that's right.
He is my least favorite out of all of them. I cannot stand juror number 7. Juror number 10. He's openly racist, and juror number 3, he has a bias against kids. But dude, number 7 pisses me off. He's like, yeah, I don't want to participate in this at all, so I'm willing to let a kid go to the electric chair so I can go to a baseball game. Like, ugh.
There's a channel called Jack's Movie Reviews. He actually made some pretty decent videos. I think he's stopped now. It's just something that he faded away from. But he made a really good video on 12 Angry Men, and like in that he claimed that juror number 7 was the antagonist. And like his assessment was essentially that the film is about the value of human life and determining that.
Sure, it
and
can
it's
be.
like, and the entire film like kind of centralizes around that. They're all deciding a man's life, and like he's the only character who just has a blatant disregard for human life. He places his own life above that. His time is more important than another man's life. And it's like, yeah, it's just
pitiful.
He's the one character who doesn't change. He doesn't like have an arc. He stays the same. He just changes his vote to go popularly. So
number 1 doesn't really have any character things going on.
Not as much. Again, I need to refresh on the movie, but like I just of all of them, I think like he's probably the character who's just the least developed because yeah, he's resistant to changing.
Yeah, even the other jurors get onto him when he changes his vote because once the vote hits 6-6, he changes it to not guilty because he sees it swinging the other way and he's trying to like expedite the process. He's like, "Oh, not guilty," and they're like, "Why? Why is he not guilty?" He's like, "I don't know. I don't." And I'm just like, and then there's like, "No, if you think he's guilty, vote guilty." He's like, "If you don't think he's guilty, then but like vote on your heart." And he's like, "I don't have to tell you why." I'm just like, "Wow, you are scum." At least like number 3 is like at least he has like a reason. At least God. And like I would disagree with him being the main antagonist. The main antagonist is clearly number 3.
I'd agree with that in all honesty. It's just an interesting interpretation, and I agree with his assessment that he's like essentially the character who like he doesn't have any reasons for like he's the one who seems the most villainous. Like he doesn't have a reason that is like stretching to the case. He's just a character who's doing
pretty villainous as well as a openly racist against those people, you know.
And that scene where they all turn their back on him. That's one of those. It's like
it's very powerful.
Yeah, man, you can tell that affected him though. That's the one reason I'd claim he's probably above juror number 7 because it's like after that he just puts it away. He's like, yeah, he went not guilty after that because he's like, holy crap, I am not a good person.
No, dude, juror number 4, my favorite, my dog. We'll get to him on video too. But he's like, because juror number 10 is like, listen to me, and juror number 4 goes, I am listening to you. Now shut up and don't open your mouth for the rest of the night. And I'm just like, ah. And then he sits down. Yeah, but anyway, I just wanted to pause here to talk about number 7, and he's kind of like, he just reminds me. Here's the thing: it's okay to not want to argue. It's okay to not want to. It's okay to want to just sit down and watch something and turn your brain off. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm not like I was talking to my mom about like film the other day, and after my brother always enters a film festival every year, and I live in Louisiana. I don't mind giving that away. And in a big central hub of North Louisiana, it's a place called Shreveport. It's a pretty big, decently sized city, and they do a big old film festival. And my brother always enters it. And this year was like the first year I went where I like went with a critical mindset, and almost every film there sucked so bad. And it's funny that my brother's actually did decently. I thought my brother's was decently well written. It was a fun little comedy. I'll send it to you. And no bias there. It was just because I shed on his movie last time he entered. I thought it was pretty bad. Where was I trying to bring this? Oh yeah. So I was talking to my mom about it, and she was like, "Oh well, I liked this movie," and I'm like, "Dude, I hated that movie." She's like, "Why did you hate it?" I'm like, "Well, it's terrible. It's got this and this and this." And she was like, "Oh well, that's just your opinion." And I was like, "Well, Mom, you know, I am right. And she's like, John, that's not right for you to say that a film can be good or bad. And I was like, no, that's the, you know,
There are
yeah,
factors that like
yeah,
influence like the way people's opinions are swayed. So yeah,
yeah.
that's kind of why I made my video in
There's
all honesty. And it's one
substance.
of those things like, yeah, there's two different areas of discussion. That's what I've always said, because you can have both. Like I think that's one thing that Theo brought up in me when we were having the discussion about Guccian's video, is that like people who go like by subjectivity or say that art like film is completely subjective, like they're not just completely nebulous, they're not just making things up. That like people who do that can support their claims with reference,
Yeah, for sure.
but like there's nuance to that discussion as well. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I can support my claim that I hate juror number 7, and I personally think he's the worst because of X, Y, and Z reasons. That is a subjective argument. Well, I mean, there really isn't such a thing as a subjective argument unless you know that person. uh, but yeah. So my mom, bringing this to a head, my mom was like, well, John, I don't want to go to the movies with you, and you come out and tell me that I'm wrong, blah blah. I'm like, mom, you're obviously not, you don't want to have that conversation, and I'm fine with just going to see Toy Story with you and like saying, I liked that movie, the end. Like, mom, I'm not going to jump down your throat about whether a movie is good or bad enough if you don't want to talk about it. Like, some people don't want to have that conversation, and that's fine. Some people just, I'm going to quote Just Right. He said, most people aren't like us. They view film, they judge film on whether they enjoyed it or not, and that's fine. You know.
I think he said that in the debate with Mahler and Wolf. He said like
Yes.
most people will go into a movie, they'll rank it by did I enjoy myself in the theater or not. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's fine.
that's how I viewed films before. Like when I was a lot younger,
Yeah,
that was
same.
just I was just like, I liked the movie, I didn't like the movie. It's like, yeah, that's fine. That's completely all right. But it's one of those things where like I think that's why I always go to quality whenever I talk about objectivity, because that's the thing that I think stems from objective references. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
but
and bringing this to the head of the head, number 7 is kind of like a microcosm of that to me. Like, like the person that doesn't want to argue, the person that just wants to like kind of free flow. And that's fine for just entertainment, but like Henry Fonda says, this is a man's life. He's like, well, how can you be sure? He's like, I think if this is talking about evidence that could put a man to death, we need to be sure. Do you have anything else you want to say about number 7?
particular into at this point, but yeah, he's like I said, I think I stated my piece. He's he is
Scumbag.
probably the most like scumbag character of the movie. So yeah.
For sure. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and
All
start.
right.
That's right.
A good place to start in analyzing juror number 8 is with his relatively passive personality. While there are rare moments in which he is confrontational, number 8 is typically soft-spoken and non-aggressive. He admits when he is not sure about what he thinks. He does not contest every single rebuttal that's given to him. What's more, he virtually never states his disagreement with somebody, and in fact, he often states his agreement with one of the other jurors voting guilty. This is what makes number 8 the ideal rival for number 3. Number 3 states emphatically that he is certain about what he thinks. He does contest every single rebuttal that's given to him. He reliably states his disagreement directly to whomever he disagrees with, and he virtually never concedes a good point when it's made by a member of the jury voting not guilty. To understand how number 8 ultimately wins the jury to his way of thinking, and how number 3 gradually loses the jury, let's begin with the first characteristic of expressing uncertainty. The very first exchange between these two men happens when number 3 asks number 8 a simple question.
You really think he's innocent? I don't know.
When number 10 asks him a question, he gets a similar answer.
I want to ask you something. Do you believe his story?
I don't know whether I believe it or not. Maybe I don't.
Shortly thereafter, number 10 asks him another question and gets another similar answer.
What are we sitting here for?
I don't know. Maybe no reason.
At face value, this does not seem like a winning strategy in a debate. How can you change somebody else's mind if you don't seem to have your own mind made up? Well, consider the impression that this gives the other people in the room. If somebody who arrives at a different conclusion than you is positive about it, you're probably not going to see any sense in trying to argue with them.
this is my first one, and I'll let him finish the point before I make mine.
In the first place. And even if you do, you'll likely just be playing defense the whole time. But if somebody who arrives at a different conclusion than you admits that they're not quite sure what they think, then there's no need to feel so defensive about what you think. As back
I'll pause it right here. So I'm trying to remember my grab at the video. So I might be looking at it the wrong way, and this is like kind of why I wanted you here, because maybe you could steer me in the right direction if I'm looking the wrong way. But I'm very confrontational, very extroverted. Um, Not that those two have to correlate, but there's an argument. The argument that he's making is like, uh, so I totally disagree with you. I don't know that I agree with you. The I don't know that I agree with you thing just seems a little passive to me, almost like trying to gain like brownie points, like being like kind of faking like you're on their side, and I don't like that, because I'm very adamant about, saying the words I disagree and here's why. Um, and the reason why number 8 was saying, well, I don't know or not, because he genuinely didn't know. He was only voting not guilty because he didn't want to be the man to send a man to death when he was uncertain. It's not that he was like, oh, this guy is not guilty. He was like, I don't know. Like, we need to talk about this, which is why he
He
voted not
essentially
guilty.
said like if we were to sentence a man to death, like it needs to be sure. It
Yeah,
needs to be
yeah.
100% sure. That like that's what I think he's probably framing here, is the idea of like expressing doubt within the opposition. I think he's kind
Okay.
of saying, that's it, like saying you don't know is something which can like make someone, I think, with a totally disagree with you. It's not necessarily that like I've made up my mind with evidence. It's just that I disagree. It's one of those things. I don't, because he is framing this a little bit with kind of loose words here, but I'm thinking the I don't know if I agree is kind of to like illustrate it like a potential second outcome. I don't know exactly, but
Okay, we can watch a little more.
I'd have to go.
But like I remember, I'm starting to remember my gripes to the video. It was kind of like presenting Henry Fonda as like a kind of like snake almost, and it's like that's not what he was. And maybe I'm misremembering the video, but I don't.
Almost like the I don't know if I agree with you was like deceptive, like it was
Yeah,
trying,
I don't.
like he had an angle.
Yeah, I don't want. I don't. I know people that do that. That'll try and just play the mediator, try and play the cool guy, and I'm just like, no, dude, like stand your ground. Like if you disagree, then like tell them why. Present your evidence. So I remember that's what my gripe was. But let's watch a little more and see
Maybe
if
that he's
I'm
painting.
misinterpreting.
Yeah, it's a little bit like he's painting one side as the good side and one side as the bad side. I don't know 100%, but yeah, just a little bit. So yeah, let's keep
Okay,
going.
let's see.
backwards as it seems, convincing somebody that your mind can change is necessary for allowing their mind to change. If your opponent suspects that your mind cannot change, they will not allow theirs to change either. Because number 8
This is another big one. So I've got into a lot of arguments on Twitter where it ends up with them going, well, I'm not going to change your mind and you're not going to change my mind, so let's not even do this. Because a lot of times whenever I get into a little spat on Twitter, if it's not just a little like fun poke jab at like Patrick Willems for being dumb, which we won't go down that rabbit hole, just laughing at him. But things like crap, hang on, I lost my train of thought. I need to jog my mind on convincing somebody that, oh yeah, your mind can change. So there was one guy who was arguing with me that you can't qualify a piece of media objectively, and throughout the whole time he was like, oh well, like I respect your opinion, blah blah, and I was like, well, here's the thing, I don't respect your opinion. Like you are advocating for like no standard, which like leaves the floodgates open. Uh, and at the end, he was like, "Well, I'm not going to change your mind. You're not going to change my mind. So why would we even do this?" Because, oh yeah, I remember what I was getting to. So a lot of times when I get into these little spats on Twitter, I always try and move it to Discord to like have like actual flowing conversation rather than just limited by 240 characters. I always try and move it off Discord if it gets far enough. And this guy was like, I don't want to, I don't want to get off of Twitter because it's just gonna go nowhere. We're not gonna change each other's mind. And I was like, wait a second, we absolutely can change each other's mind. Like, I recently had my mind changed about a competitive game that I play, because because a mechanic that I thought was really dumb, and then someone provided the correct counterpoints, correct evidence, and then I was like, oh crap, that's actually not dumb. That's actually like works. That's working as intended. And then hey, problem solved. And it was a mechanic that I absolutely loathed, and now I don't anymore because I mean, I still hate it actually, but I get that it works properly. And it's like, yeah, and I gave him that as an example. Like, no, dude, like that's the whole point of discussion. Like, our minds definitely can change. Like, would you? And this might be a fatal flaw in my like argumentative process, which is another reason why I wanted you here, because maybe you could give me some wisdom. But like, do you think it's like building bridges wise, it's like necessary for there to be some kind of prerequisite of like, hey, my mind is open to change?
I believe in that personally.
Okay.
That might just vary from person to person, but like I try to keep an open mind when it comes to, because the reason that I appreciate objectivity when it comes to film criticism is that I think it's crucial to making it so that like everyone's on a level playing
Yeah,
field, because like it makes it so that
absolutely.
you're tied down. Yeah, it makes it so you're tied down to your information, because like
Yes,
I
yes.
say that a lot of times with the movies. I'm like, I think that X movie is good, but I could be wrong. Like Midsummer is one of those
You don't
movies.
think that
I
that
think The
undercuts your
Critical
message?
Drinker. Yeah, what?
You don't think that undercuts your message? Saying this is good, but I could be wrong though. Like, I don't know, just like shrugging your shoulders. Like, you don't think that undercuts your message? Not being like
I think that
definitive, like this is.
I think if this is just something that's for me personally, but I just think that if you say something very definitively that like kind of makes it so that you seem a little less open-minded, because like
Okay.
that's why I kind of leave the gate open when it comes to objectivity, because I'm like, if there's evidence which proves me wrong, then that's it. Like like I was saying, Midsummer, I put that on my my top 10 favorite films of the year this year. I watched times in theaters. I think it holds up to scrutiny to a decent degree.
Hmm.
I think it's flawed, but it's one of those things. The Critical Drinker, he called that the worst film of the year, and I would
Oh.
disagree with him vehemently on that one, because I'm like, dude, I I do not think that that movie is worse than Captain Marvel and Glass, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm willing to hear out an argument against the film, because I'm like, there could be something which I'm missing, or something which maybe is a bigger
Yeah. What
flaw
is
than
the
I'd
process?
imagine. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I say with like my mind can be changed. It just depends on your argumentation. So I think there's a mix between both, where you're like, you present your argument and you can say I I'm fairly certain about this thing, but at the same time it's important to be open, rather than to just say I am right, and no matter what's like presented to you. So which I
Oh well,
think it would,
that's
yeah.
what the other crowd thinks objectivity is. They constantly tell Mahler like, oh, you think, like Quentin said it, you think your opinions are 100% facts that can never be disproven by anyone. That of I don't want to misgender. I think
Sheehan.
girl. Uh,
It's a she, yeah.
Oh, okay. That made that awful video on Mahler, and the whole
Video is
time
really bad.
they were
It's so
well, the
bad.
video undercuts itself at the very beginning because they get the definition of objectivity
Finished
wrong.
wrong.
Yeah, at the
Yeah,
very
that
beginning.
like
Yeah.
I was lost. Like we covered it on Southpaw's
Oh,
podcast, and I
did you
swear
really?
I was lost
I want to link
at
to
the
that.
beginning. I'm like, you shot yourself in the foot with the beginning.
Yeah.
You mixed two definitions of objective together, and that's the premise of your entire video. You have a flawed premise,
Yeah,
and it's
the
like,
whole
yeah,
thing is shot in the foot at the beginning. It's it's like the Last Jedi. Oh, the radish should be shot down at the beginning. Wait,
I
like
rewatched that movie recently, and I swear that
no.
was something I thought of. Like the slow motion with no like sound is like fire at the base. It's like, oh my
Why? But why?
god,
Can we just stop
no.
for a second? Just like why?
The entire
I think
the
even
entire film
Plinkett
hinges
mentioned
on that.
it. Yeah, Plinkett did. Plinkett even
Yeah.
mentioned it. Like, I don't want to get on the Last Jedi too much, but like, I was thinking in my head, like, 4 different reasons why that film should not even like the plot of the film is just like forced. It's like the TIE fighter should have swarmed them. They should have been shot down in the beginning. Uh, the shield shouldn't work like that. Like there's just the hyperspace pincer attack. There's just like, oh my god, there's so many reasons why that. Oh yeah, and then there's they're running at a pace that's faster than us, And it's like, then why aren't they outrunning you? It's like that's how space works.
It's like things work the way it works so that the plot works. That's pretty much the Last Jedi. That's how the entire film runs. But yeah,
Oh
like
god.
we'll be talking forever
Yeah,
if we
we'll be
stay
talking
on
forever more on
that.
the Last Jedi. Oh my god. But what to tracing the rabbit hole back up. Excuse me. We were talking about talking about plots made
Kind
in
of
the.
leave like the idea that your mind can be changed
Oh yeah,
if
yeah, yeah, yeah. So like, I don't like the mentality of just kind of shrugging your shoulders and going like, I mean, I don't know, man, like maybe it could be wrong. Like, yes, I could be wrong if someone presented the correct counter arguments because that's objectivity.
yeah.
We're not in our own voids where we're subservient to ourselves. We're absurd. It's a common ground. I use that word a lot too. It's a common ground that we can all stand on to present our cases, and it's not like we don't get to just retreat in a corner when someone proves us wrong. We have to just say, yeah, dude, you got me. And if you want to fight back, you have to have the right counter arguments. I had a quote from Mahler in my head, but I'm so short-term memory loss, I think I lost it. Um, but yeah, I have a friend of mine that does that a lot. They'll like state their opinion, which is like pretty decently well thought out, and then they'll just do like the shrug emoji and be like, but I don't know. I'm like, come on, dude, like stand up for yourself. Say like, yes, this is like,
I
and you were telling
like I
me
think you should be
earlier. Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
go on. Go no, you go ahead. You're
You
saying.
you were telling me earlier, like I'm maybe that I might be interpreting it wrong. That maybe it's less about like like uh, shrugging it off and kind of acting like a snake, and more like um, counter arguments is kind of presenting like, hey, make yourself seem reasonable.
I think so. That because that's why I'd agree with the statement is like I'm just it's the idea that you're open to the possibility rather than you're sure. Like I think I'm with you with the idea that you should be fairly certain about your position. Like you should have evidence to support your points. You should like because I would stand by the fact that I think that Midsummer is a good film. Even if I think it's flawed, like I think I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. But
I'm gonna
at the
Google it.
same
I'm gonna see what it
time,
is.
at the same time, I know there's a lot of people who are not a fan of that movie, and I'm like, maybe I just haven't heard the right argument. But from what I've seen the movie 3 times, and I've scrutinized it, and I really do think it holds up. So I feel that my position is solid, but at the same time, I know it could be changed. So that's what I think is the idea with like being open to the idea that your mind can be changed. You just don't state that like I'm absolutely 100% sure and like nothing's going to change my mind. So
Yeah,
that's what I think is the
yeah.
idea.
So two things I want to bring up to that. One was Mahler and Wolf's debate and God be with Wolf, our boy. But
100%.
uh, what is it?
That's
Him,
right. Or the
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
not so great debate guy. Or
Yeah. Well, it was just right, and he was saying because Just Right was trying to say, well, there's always going to be a counter argument. Someone can always bring up a counter argument because such and such happened. This happened in my life. And then Mueller said, well, not always. There's not always going to be a counter argument. Sometimes you like it's irrefutable. For example, like why didn't the Radish shoot? Why didn't the supremacy shoot the Radis instead? Like
uh,
there's nothing that can change that. Like
with the Jurassic Park fence paddock scene, because
yeah.
like I showed in my video, like the you see in the earlier scenes that there's no like trench
Mhm.
before, and then it turns into a cliff just in that scene. So you're like all the evidence inside of that film proves that the plot hole exists. So you're like, yeah, there's instances like that where I agree with him, and he did say that in the debate. He said you can always levy a counter argument to this kind of stuff in English literature, and I was just like, I don't know about that,
Yeah,
man.
not
And
always.
he tried holding that up, but yeah, like the whole like why didn't they use hyperdrive?
I don't know.
He just was silent after that. So it's like yeah, it's like yeah, I agree with that there aren't always counter arguments, but I like what I meant on that is that I'm open to the idea that maybe there's something I haven't heard of.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
kind of why I,
And
like yeah,
that is the
maybe
process. That is objectivity.
it's exactly so.
Yeah, there's if you want to we all throw our evidence. I'll quote Mahler again. We all throw our evidence up in the air, and someone's is going to stick. And it's like he was talking about, he was using Holdo as an example. He's like, well, I think the conflict between Poe and Holdo is badly written because of X, Y, and Z, and we conclude it is badly written. And then some guy comes up and says, nuh-uh, it's actually not badly written because of X, Y, and Z, and he pulls up new counter evidence, and he goes, oh shit, well, turns out it was actually well written. And then some other guy comes down years later and says, hey, you guys were both wrong. It's actually mediocre because of this and this evidence. And they go, oh, okay, like that's like yeah. Anyway, so I think I get what you're saying. So that here comes the introspective question: do I need to change the way that I present myself in discussion? Uh, do I do I need to not be as like I guess
Insistent on your position, maybe, or
abrasive? I guess because I'll like flat out just be like, no, I disagree because of X, Y. No, you are wrong because of X, Y, and Z. Is that like not the right way to go about this according to counter arguments?
it depends. I think he's saying the way he's framing it, at least, I think he's saying juror three is the idea of like someone having their mind made up like 100% and like not being open to the idea of different things. Because that was what he said in the intro. He was saying like he's very outspoken. He responds to all the counterpoints, but he doesn't like respond reasonably when people bring up points until the end when his bias is revealed. So I think that that's the thing that he's going against here. But like I think he's just advocating for open mindedness
Hmm.
essentially. So yeah.
Hang on, I pulled up chat and they said my mic is low. I'm actually gonna turn that up just a little bit. We're gonna go to recording settings. The chat's actually been kind of popping off a little bit. I need to pay attention to them.
What to say?
Let's
Wow.
see, properties, levels. Here we go. I'm gonna turn it up to. Oh shit. Uh, is that better, guys? Hello. Blah 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 blah. I'm gonna turn it down.
Increase for me at
Hello,
least.
hello,
So
hello.
yeah.
You can do mine in Discord if it gets a little bit too loud. You can like right click my face and it'll. I say my face. You can right click number four's face. And what's it called? Let me check chat. He said that they're saying that's a lot better. Okay, gotcha. I'm gonna actually reach. Actually, see. I think what he's trying to frame is starting a conversation on a confrontation. Yeah, that's kind of like what Evan was saying. In most of the goal isn't in most debates, the goal isn't really to change the opposing view. Rather, it is to explore the topic or to give the facts. Interesting.
Like you're not trying to change like someone else's worldview necessarily. Like you have debates like that, like atheism versus like religion. That's
Uh-huh.
that's one of those things that's like essentially you're debating this someone's like
Entire life,
view
yeah.
on life itself exactly. But yeah, usually when you're just debating something like a court case, that's something where you're presenting arguments and two people have different perspectives on it. So you just need to present the evidence and figure out like which one holds up. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
how most debates would go. I assume so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my whole like thing about this like this pause honestly was like, do I need to change the way that I'm like arguing because I'm pretty abrasive?
Think necessarily like I don't think just like the being abrasive or like being soft spoken because I think you can be willing to change your mind, but you can be very like open, like you can be very outspoken because like, that's the thing. He just says these two characters feel this way. Like you have juror number three who's like very outspoken, and you have Henry Fonda as juror number eight, and he is soft spoken. It's like that doesn't necessarily need to define either perspective. They could be flipped. I'd imagine it just depends. So
Yeah,
I think he's
interesting.
mainly going with their argumentation styles, but yeah, I don't think you need to change that. It just because I think you agreed with that idea that like as long as you keep your mind open to the
That it
fact
can
that
be
like
changed.
evidence, yeah,
Yeah.
evidence could come up,
Yeah, that's
assuming
objectivity.
that assuming that you aren't like certain about your position because you've like researched it like and know that your points are bulletproof, then yeah. So
Well, I mean, number four thought his was bulletproof, and then he got changed.
mhm.
But yeah,
Yep.
I think I get what counter arguments are saying and what you are saying, which is like kind of dispelled my gripe, which is it's not like a kind of a snake of like, oh, I don't know, to kind of make yourself seem reasonable like in that kind of way, but kind of like in a more like open way of like, hey, like we're gonna discuss things and like I'm like I am open to my mind is open here. It's not that I don't believe in my points. It's just that my mind is open. I think I get it now.
Yeah, like the idea of extending an Oliver Branch rather than just saying I'm not even confident in my position, because I think you should be confident in your position for certain. But yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's where my gripe was, and I'm this is why I wanted to watch it with you, because I'm assuming you could like get my head straight, which is you did. Like, it's not about that. Yeah, it's about being confident. Yeah. Okay, I get it.
well, it's interesting. I don't know how he'll go into this more. But yeah, these are very interesting area discussions. So yeah, we'll see.
Expressed uncertainty. Not only do the other jurors want to hear what he thinks, everybody makes an effort to reason with him.
Now, perhaps if the gentleman down there who's disagreeing with us, well, perhaps you could tell us why. Let us know what you're thinking, and we might be able to show you where you're mixed up.
Compare this, or rather contrast this, with juror number 3, when he stands alone near the end of the film. Rather than expressing even an ounce of uncertainty, he maintains absolute certainty.
Every single thing that took place in that courtroom, but I mean everything, says he's...
Yeah, like I think that this is where I think I could understand you being a little bit frustrated with this. Is he's almost painting him as being villainous because he's made up his mind.
Mhm.
But like the flaw with his perspective is that he has a bias, and
Yes.
it's because he's made up his mind because of a certain reason that isn't related to the evidence.
Mhm.
And that's why he's refuting the points that are brought up. That's the problem, not necessarily that he has his mind set, because you can have your mind set and have it based on evidence, but like neither juror number 8 or juror number 3 have it based on evidence, at least at the beginning of the film. They do as the film progresses. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And yeah, I'm glad that you caught that, because I was like, am I crazy?
Nah, I get that. Let's go.
I got it.
What do you think, I'm an idiot or something?
The reaction is what you might expect. Nobody makes an effort to reason with him.
Well? Say something!
So remember, in order for someone else's mind to change, they must believe that your mind can change. Another characteristic of juror number 8 is the fact that he does not contest every single counter-argument that's given to him. Obviously, he does contest many of them, but there are many more which he does not.
It's possible the boy lost his knife and that somebody else stabbed his father with a similar knife. It's just possible.
One of the arguments that number 8 makes is that it is possible that somebody other than the accused committed the murder with a similar looking weapon. However, when number 4 offers a rebuttal, number 8 does not contest it.
You mean you're asking us to believe that somebody else did the stabbing with exactly the same kind of knife? The odds are 1,000,000 to 1.
It's possible, but not very probable.
Once again, this does not seem like a winning strategy in a debate. Isn't the whole idea of a debate to defend your position and challenge the other position at every turn? Well, in fact, it isn't. Number 8's argument was that a coincidence is possible, which is true. Number 4's argument was that this particular coincidence is not very probable.
Yeah, because then you make yourself look like an ass, like number 3 does.
Yeah.
Because he
Like,
goes
honestly,
after
this is-
everyone.
Because this is the whole idea with contrivances, which I might explore later in different videos, but I swear that's the whole idea behind it. Like, a contrivance in a movie is essentially luck, and it like the idea, like with juror number 4, which I would agree with 100%, is probability. We're just like, there's a difference between finding a silver dollar in the street and like becoming president of the United States and winning the lottery on the same day. It's like both are a stroke of luck, but you're like both have like different aspects that affect a story, like especially if there's multiple in one. And like that's what the problem like that plagues especially The Force Awakens, or just like everything
I was
in
just
the
about
entire
to use The
film
Force
is a
Awakens as an example.
coincidence.
Just about
So-
the conveniences awakens. I was just about to use that. I love Mahler's Unbridled Rage, because he's just like, yeah, next on the Millennium Falcon is Han fucking Solo. Like,
I love Red Letter Media. Magic and coincidences. Oh, we just gotta run into Han Solo. Hey, what a coincidence! Like, oh man,
oh,
that movie.
Rich. Oh, Rich. Rich has not been on with the board with the sequel trilogy since the first one. Mike loved The Force Awakens. He loved it, and Jay liked it, and Mike was like, it's all right.
I enjoyed The Force Awakens on
I
my
did too.
first watch. I don't
I
know
did
about
too.
you. Yeah, that
I
was one of
loved
those things. I've said this, man, like, but like after The Last Jedi, like I was turned off, because when I watched The Force Awakens, I was like, this is a good setup.
Yes.
I just need to see where they're going. And like after The Last Jedi, it's like they're going nowhere. and they just ended the story with Broom Boy. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I think you could have made a good sequel to The Force Awakens. Having looked at the world building, I'm like,
Oh God,
you're in
I
a
was just
really
about to
rough
mention the world
position,
building.
man.
We're gonna go forever if we.
Gosh, yeah, like,
we could talk about Star Wars another
yeah,
time.
with the Rise of Skywalker, that's something I'd love to make a video on when that movie comes out on Blu-ray. But essentially, like, if I make a video, I just want to talk about how the world building is just completely broken.
Subjectively, world building is actually my favorite part of storytelling. So like, my favorite anime is Bleach. Actually, my favorite anime is Boku no Hero, but for a decade it was Bleach. And Bleach has a really bad problem with its plot in the third arc. And it's characters that kind of just go nowhere. But the world building, man, it's so sick. We learned so much about the different like realms and like how like the different creatures survive in it, and like the world is so sick. And I subjectively I love it, and I think it's great because of it has great world building. But I'm not gonna sit here and tell you you should watch Bleach because it's amazing. And like, no, it's got problems, but. That's why this new series personally is so egregious to me, is because JJ didn't want to put the work in to to tell a new story, so he just said, "Fuck it, Rebels versus Empire again." Why? Don't think about it. And it's just like,
And a lot of people have said, like, don't you see, like, the prequels were criticized for like having too much politics, right? And it's like, yes, but like you
At least
can
it had
do
them.
it subtly. Like they did that in the OT. Like you had the meeting with the Empire officers where they talk about the regional governors. You're like, that's solid world building. That explains the state of the galaxy, even if it's just one scene. But it's like you need to explain the whole thing with the new Republic. Like if I were to craft a sequel to The Last Jedi, like that would be my key focus, is like focusing on the fallout that would happen after the destruction of the New Republic.
Well,
that would not go
Legends?
Unnoticed. Sorry?
Have you seen any Legends? Read any? Played any Star Wars Legends?
No. Is that the
extended universe?
Is that the stuff from the old canon that's decanonized now?
Yeah,
I haven't read any of that.
It's called Legends.
Is that good? I think that's
it's decent.
Yeah.
So at least the world building makes sense. So like there's a book that takes place right after Return of the Jedi. It's called Raid at Bakura, so Rescue at Bakura, something at Bakura, and it basically like the world building goes on to be like, yeah, like even like we just dealt a very hard strike to the Empire, but that doesn't mean they stop existing. You know, like we've got them. You know, we're probably at equal play. They're like at equal playing fields now. It's like they become like the like almost like kind of like separatist sort of like of independent systems like Kappa, and then they go on to form the New Republic, and the Empire becomes the remnant, the Imperial remnant, which it makes sense because you know the rebels are winning, they would push them on, and then they become the Imperial remnant. And I recently replayed Jedi Academy. Luke goes on to make his own academy, and he makes it different from the original one, which was like sterile and like no emotions, no love. And Luke's like, yeah, you can bang if you want to, I don't care, but like, you know, just make sure to learn the ways of the Jedi, like, and it just makes sense, like, oh god, Star Wars tangents, we'll be here all day. I'm gonna go ahead and start it.
Let's get going.
Which is also true. And number 8 knows that contesting a reasonable point is an unreasonable thing to do. So even though he might not want to, he concedes. Contrast this with juror number 3, who, rather than picking his battles, impulsively fights every battle he can.
I'd like to find out if an old man who drags one foot when he walks because he had a stroke last year can get from his bedroom to his front door in 15 seconds.
He said 20 seconds.
He said 15.
He said 20 seconds. What are you trying to distort?
He said 15.
Now, in this moment, number 3 has stated something incorrect, and he was promptly corrected. He now has 2 choices. He can either concede or contest.
How does he know how long 15 seconds is? You can't judge a thing like that.
He said 15 seconds. He was very positive about it.
He was an old man. Half the time he was confused. How could he be positive about anything?
Bam.
Yeah.
This is what happens.
Music is funny for that, but yeah, I remember watching that for the first time. Like, just the look on his face, he's like, why did I say that? It's one of those things like, yeah, he did not mean to do that. He did not mean to say that, but that's one of those things like, oh man, Yeah, this is why I like juror number 3 to a degree. It's because it's interesting the way that like his story closes out. But yeah, as for his argumentation style, he's not good in this instance. So all right,
Yeah, there's a point towards the end of the movie, or towards the beginning of the movie, where he's like, well, we can throw out all the other evidence. The testimony of the woman is she physically she saw him stab him. That's unshakable testimony. And then after number 4 gets refuted on that point, and he's like, damn, you got me, like, not guilty, because number 4 is a baller. Number three is like, well, what about all the other evidence? The da da da, the da da da. And the guy, juror number 2 is like, well, you said that none of that, we could throw out all the other evidence. It's like, uh-oh, shot yourself in the foot again. Like, remember earlier when you said that we could throw out all the other evidence? Uh-huh.
gonna do.
Yeah, number 3 shoots himself in the foot a lot, but you can press play.
When you try to win every single battle, eventually you're going to shoot yourself in your own foot. Just because you disagree with somebody's conclusion doesn't mean you disagree with every reason they have for reaching it. If your opponent says something reasonable and you contest it, you're going to make yourself appear unreasonable. It's better to just concede to a good point. Sure, it won't look like you're winning the debate in that particular moment, but you'll still seem reasonable and you'll still appear to have an open mind, which, as we've already covered, will likely keep your opponent's mind open as well.
It seems to me that this man has some very good points to make.
Moving on to the third characteristic here, number 8 rarely, if ever, states his disagreement with another juror. Consider the following exchange between himself and number 10.
I think we proved that the old man couldn't have heard the voice say, I'm going to kill you. But supposing he did.
prove it at all. What are you talking about?
Supposing he really did hear it.
Number 8 clearly disagrees with number 10, and in this moment, he could have easily stated that. He could have easily responded by saying, oh, come on, what do you mean? I did just prove it, weren't you listening? But it's more important that he present his next argument to the entire jury than it is to defend his previous argument.
And that's very interesting, because you can do that in a scenario where you're talking with like 11 other people. However, and here's I guess another point of contention. There are moments where you're talking to someone about something, discussing someone, and then they just make some bullshit up, like do a whataboutism or like strawman you. Or what happens to me a lot is I'll have to like copy and paste a tweet of like a counter that I like something that I already rebutted, and I'm like, were you not? And I'll so like badly want to get cocky and be like, dude, were you not listening? Like, look, it took me like 5 exchanges to get the first guy I was talking about earlier on the topic of the subject of the throne room, because he just kept making shit up. And after like I refuted all his whataboutisms and stuff, and I was like, okay, we're finally on topic. We're finally talking about the original topic. Like, were you not listening? So like, what do you think of number 8's decision here to not go like double down on the rebuttal and like move to something else? Do you not think that hurts his points? Do you not think that hurts his position to like not defend himself again?
Yeah, I'm not 100% with counter arguments on this one. Like I think you should defend your points that you have. Like I think what he's framing here is the idea that you shouldn't stick to any one point particularly. I think you should be able to close out whatever point you present rather than moving on to different ones. Because like you said, if you move on to a bunch of different arguments at different times, then like the conversation can become muddled. I'm not quite sure. Is that how he's framing it?
I don't know. We can rewind it a little bit. I'll rewind it. Let's listen to it again.
That he present his next responded by saying clearly disagrees with number 10. And in this moment, he could have easily stated that. He could have easily responded by saying, oh, come on, what do you mean? I did just prove it, weren't you listening? But it's more important that he present his next argument to the entire jury than it is to defend his previous argument against one member of the jury. There was no use in stating his disagreement, so he didn't.
But suppose he didn't
prove it at all.
Like you said, I think that can work when you're trying to like prove your point to like a group of people. But yeah, when it's just a one-on-one, I don't think moving on is the correct solution. So yeah, I think that's kind of what you were going down. But yeah, I don't know. Again, it's a little bit of the way he's framing this, but I think that I'm not 100% with him on that one. So yeah. What do you think? Oh,
Oh, my bad. Shit, my my
no,
mic. I
wait,
accidentally muted my
oh,
mic.
I can hear you.
Yeah, my bad.
I was
So
like, oh no.
I was saying that it also depends on the point of contention. So I think there's a case to be made where you could move on to a different argument because Mahler did it a lot against what was that guy's name who said that, bro, you get to look at women. Uh,
Major Lee.
Major Lee.
Oh my
There was a lot
gosh.
of points that didn't get like finished, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't you say that you could make a case for what counter arguments is saying, moving on to a different point, if you already have so many other ones? Like with the Last Jedi, it's just bleeding out of every orifice that you can just move on to a different point. But
Uh,
let's take Jurassic Park for example, like the paddock scene, like that's a decently sized world building error. Uh, but you wouldn't want to just like move on from that, move on to a different one, because like I think that's probably the most egregious part of the film. Uh, so would you not agree that like I guess it depends on if you can if that point really does need to be proven to if that point really does need to be proven to prove your overall conclusion of the quality is X.
I think I'm with you on that one. The idea that like, if the point's not going anywhere, or if like maybe you don't need to stick to any particular argument, like I think I think it's the way he's framing this almost seems just like in a particular way, just argument, like you should move on to different arguments. I'm like, I think it would depend on the magnitude of a certain argument, but I like, and it would depend on how the argument is going too, because I think that's like one of the things that they did with Major League a lot is moving on to different points because there's some instances where he just wasn't going anywhere in that debate. But yeah, it depends, I think. But
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
yeah,
But we can go ahead. Oh, I'm full screen. Hang on. I'll press play. Boop.
What are you talking about?
Supposing he really did hear it.
Number 3 does not see the value in this type of restraint. To him, if anybody reaches a different conclusion than the one he has, that person must be confronted.
There is a reasonable doubt in my mind.
What reasonable doubt? That's nothing but words. Here, look at this. The kid you just decided isn't guilty was seen ramming this into his father.
This doesn't work.
I
Not just
slightly disagree. So there was a time where I freaking like I felt like a ninja and who was surrounded by like 10 other ninjas, and then I just like like karate them all, because there was this one time that I someone made a tweet about like I think it was Sonic and the Black Knight, which is like known to be a pretty bad game. And I made a claim about objectivity. I was like, well, you can like it however you want, but that game's like objectively bad. And the guy said, strawman me somehow. He said, oh, like objectivity be like subjective time. Huh? I was like, what did I say that was subjective? And then like 10, because he was like a relatively big guy, he had like a couple thousand followers, and I got like bombarded by a bunch of different people. And instead of like addressing that guy, I did what number 3 did. I addressed every single person who was tweeting at me, and eventually got down to him, and refuted every single one of their points, and like counterclaimed every single one of them, and counter arguments is saying like you shouldn't go after every single one. I'm like, well, why not if you have the confidence? What do you think?
he's framing this as a general negative, and I disagree with him on that. Like this,
Okay, let me
I
hear
think
you.
that this can be necessary to different discussions. It just depends. Like I said, it depends on what the argument being presented is, because he's essentially like saying this as an argumentation style is not productive. And I'm like, it depends. It
Yeah, it can be.
depends on like what's being discussed and like what the opposition is saying. But yeah, I don't I think it's worth avoiding, but still there's instances where that's necessary, I'd say. So
Yeah, because I'm confident as fuck. Dude, I'll pull out 2 katanas and I'll go ham. Like, uh, and bringing that back to the other conversation of like, well, make sure you're not cocky enough to think that you can't be proven wrong. It's like, well, sure, that's objectivity if someone has the correct counter evidence. But like confidence, doesn't is correlated with cockiness, I guess. It can be. But like Yeah, I think I disagree with this just because I remember that time where I took on like 12 different people and like knocked every single one of them down a peg and like, hey, I'm right and here's why. So I don't necessarily, and you see what I mean by I'm saying this first episode I have a little bit of gripes with.
He's not being very specific in like what like he's kind of isolating the context of these specific points in the film, but
Yeah,
he is I think he's kind of going for just a generalization of like
argumentation
argumentation
itself.
styles. Yeah, which I'm like I think that's all right, but it is contextual. That's what I'd
I
say,
was
which I think I'm
literally
agreeing.
just about to say that. Context is important. Oh God.
Yep.
Just that it doesn't change the mind of the person being confronted, it doesn't change the minds of anybody who's listening either. And what adds insult to injury is the fact that number 3 hardly ever admits when he agrees with one of his opponents, which stands in stark contrast with number 8, who regularly states his agreement with
Yeah,
his
3
opponents.
really makes himself
According
look
to
like a
testimony,
villain.
the boy looks guilty. Maybe he is. Supposing we're wrong.
Supposing we're wrong. Supposing this whole building should fall down on my head, you can suppose anything.
That's right.
The knife and the way it was bought is pretty strong evidence, don't you think?
I do.
Good.
You're not going to change anybody's mind. So if you want to be stubborn and hang this jury, go ahead. The kid will be tried again and found guilty as sure as he's born.
Probably right.
Even when everyone else in the room disagrees with number 3, number 8 still does not state his disagreement. Even after all of the other men have changed their vote to not guilty, number 3 aggressively contests and number 8 passively concedes. The differences between these two men could be summarized in 2 pieces of dialogue.
I don't care whether I'm alone or not. It's my right.
It's your right.
So how do you change another person's mind? The short answer is, you don't. You can't change somebody else's mind.
I would agree with that. I would agree that it kind of goes over to subjectivity. It's like, I'll quote Mahler. He's like, Mahler said something along the lines of like, your mind will change on things that you value, and that's like fine. Like, the evidence can. I remember they were having a conversation with Wolf and Mahler had a private conversation with I Had Everything that's referenced a lot.
Yeah.
and I really wish I could have heard it.
I think that's lost to time now, but man, that would have been legendary if they released that.
They he at the end of it, they got I Had Everything to admit that the film was bad. And he was like, okay, like the film is bad, fine, like I get it, almost like begrudgingly. And Mahler was like, okay, calm down, let's talk about it. And then I Had Everything kind of got like kind of a little deep. He was like, okay, so if this movie sucks so bad, then why do I like it? And then Mahler was like, okay, now you need to have introspection. Like, find out what your biases are. We all have them. Like Ramsar's personal bias is that he likes world building. If a character and plot level and like dialogue fails and like the cinematography and stuff like fails in a movie, if it has sick ass world building, I'm probably still gonna like it.
Seriously, like the one that I cite a lot, because like a lot of people will do like The Room, and like I don't think it's a very productive example, because like everyone just likes that movie ironically. What I will cite a lot is Game of Thrones season 6. I think it's very flawed. It's not particularly well written. I think there's a lot of writing flaws in that series past season 3, but I love that season. And it's like, why do I love it? I love it for all the payoffs, even though I don't think all of them are particularly earned. Like all the stuff they did with John, I love all of that on a subjective level, even though I know they didn't really put in the legwork to get there. And it's what led to a lot of like worse writing decisions along the way. But it's like, yeah, you can figure out what it is that makes you enjoy something, even if it's not very well written. That just depends on person to person.
Yeah,
so,
And that's why Mahler loves Infinity War, actually, is because of the character payoffs. He's just like, dude, like, there's so much, like, well, maybe it's not as much as season 6, because I quit, like, midway through season 5. The last thing I saw was Mormont getting the scaly disease. What was that? Was that season 5?
it was season 5. That was so
Okay.
arbitrarily
Okay.
knocked off
Okay.
in season 7.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, halfway through season 5 is when I quit. But I did watch Mahler's videos on season 8.
That show is on a different level, man. Have you seen The Rise of Skywalker yet?
I haven't. I have not.
Rise of Skywalker is bad, man, but I went in and I was like, there's no way this is gonna trump Game of Thrones season 8. Like the
Is
bells
that
is
bad?
like one of the no, it didn't for certain. Game of
Okay,
Thrones
okay.
season 8 is worse. It's freaking the bells. If it's one of the worst episodes of television I've ever seen. Like the series as a whole, like season 8, it's like they did it on by design. It's like they were trying to like
Well,
take
Danny
out
kind of
certain
forgot about the
things.
Iron Fleet, so
Oh man, it's so funny that they didn't release after the episode for episode 6. It's like they probably realized they should stop giving those as ammo to video essayists. But yeah, it's man, it's interesting to figure that out. You know, it's like that's the subjective side of things. You know, everyone. That's what I say about objectivity is like everyone can agree with what's on screen in a film.
yeah,
That's what like brings everybody together. But there's other reasons why people just subjectively love films.
which
Like
is
I
fine.
released, yeah, I released what I would call my top 10 favorite films of the decade. There's a lot of subjective baggage within those. There are some which I
Well, yeah,
like
because you used
for
the word
objective
"my
and
favorite." You didn't say the best.
yes, exactly. And it's like, like my number one that I picked was Whiplash, and
Oh,
I
that's a good
said
movie.
that. Yeah. Oh man, you should see it. I said that for subjective reasons and objective reasons because I'm like, on a subjective level, I love the way the film was put together, but also just on every level of filmmaking, from the writing, the editing, the direction, it's just like that movie's pretty much what I would call almost
I'm
flawless.
trying to see if there's
That
any
movie is
streaming
amazing.
services that have it. Crackle. What is this? Sony Crackle. I don't have Sony Crackle.
If it's on
I'm sure.
Amazon,
I'm sure it's not on Amazon, but I mean, it is to rent. I'm sure it's worth the $3, right, to rent it.
dude, yeah, it's worth a Blu-ray, dude. That movie's excellent. So yeah, check that out someday.
Okay, and I mean, I've heard it's great. In fact, a quick tangent. I play competitive Super Smash Brothers and Street Fighter and tournaments. Um,
Sweet deal.
and do what? You too?
No. I was
Oh,
just
okay.
saying, sweet deal.
Oh, okay. And if you type in Ramsar on YouTube, you'll get a lot of VODs of like me playing in tournaments. But there's this esport organization called the Summit that invites a lot of top level players from different esports. It started as Dota and then it went to like Smash and like Tekken. And I don't know if they've done Tekken. They do Counter Strike too, I think. Anyway, so for Melee, they always do skits. It was not just Melee for everyone. They always do like funny skits. They have a whole like film team, editing team, and everything there, and they do really funny skits. And one of them was a guy was like, "Bro, I'm done playing Fox. I'm just gonna play Ice Climbers now, and I'm gonna learn the chain grab." So if you haven't played Melee before, Ice Climbers are two characters, and if you grab, you're playing two characters at once. If you press a button, the other ice climber will do that same button 6 frames later at running at 60 FPS. Um, and if you grab someone and then mash A at 200 BPM, it will lock them in the grab. You just bop 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 bop, and it's just a slow, painful death if you get one grab with them. And surprisingly, it is not banned. But he's practicing it. He's like, yeah, man, I'm just gonna learn the ICs and just be done with all this work. He's like, okay. And the guy comes in. He's like, as Ice Climbers player comes in. And he's like, oh, uh, you're going a little bit too fast. Slow it down a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. And he starts the wobbling again. He's like, uh, not quite my tempo, but try again. And he's just like, he's like, why do you think I just hurled a Wii at you right now? He's like, were you rushing or were you dragging?
Gosh, yeah, that scene's become very meme. Like, have you seen the We're All Yankovic?
I have.
That's
It's great.
that's so
He's playing the
well put
accordion.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
it's great.
scene is that's like the kind of almost the scene of the movie. Like the ending trumps any other scene in that movie. Like it builds so well to the ending. Don't spoil it for yourself if you don't know how the movie ends. But holy crap, like that scene is it does such a great job illustrating like stress and like claustrophobia, because like pretty much everyone's had a situation similar to that. And
Okay.
yeah, there's something about that scene which is really relatable. So yeah, I love that movie.
So what would you say the message of the movie is? The themes.
It's about finding fulfillment. Like, this is the thing, man. People say that like people who are on objectivity like can't assess themes or find meaning. It's like
I
you
remember you telling me about
can.
that.
It's just not. I just think objectivity is a little bit more interesting of a discussion. Like you can talk about that. Or like I'd say that Whiplash is about like like relentlessly pursuing greatness. I think that Lessons from the Screenplay did a video on that. He compared it to Black Swan. I haven't watched that video yet, but honestly, just based on that, I'm like, I think I'll know what it'll
Black
go over.
Swan
So
has
yeah.
the Spider-Man girl, Kirsten Dunst, right? Or am I tripping? No.
Oh, it's
It's the
Natalie
Padme.
Portman.
Natalie Portman. Yes. My bad.
Mm,
I haven't heard.
yeah,
What is that? Like a thriller or like?
it's like
It's like
it's a Darren Aronofsky film, so it's bizarre. He's the guy who did Mother. It's yeah.
Oh, I heard Mahler and Just Right talking about Mother. I don't. That's a whole other tangent actually.
It's a
So
weird and wild. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't know.
we won't go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, going back up the rabbit hole. We were. Let me rewind it a little bit. Hang on.
How do you change another person's?
Oh yeah, it was like you can't. It's only like they can change their mind, and I think I'd agree with that, because and I brought that back to Mahler, who was I had everything was saying like why do I like this it's like so it's like it's all down to the facts presented to you and how that like processes and like ones and zeros through your brain. It's not like I say, Evan, the Star Wars: The Last Jedi is a good film. It is, and you're just like, what? It's like you like, and even if I presented evidence, you would have to look at that evidence and you would have to process it yourself. It's not the fact of just hearing the evidence is what does it. It's like processing it and plugging it into like the scenes. Am I? Would you agree with that or like?
Yeah, 100%. Like, because that's the whole thing with objectivity is like, like a lot of people say that like when you say a film is objectively bad, you're saying your perspective on it is like definitive, like it's provable beyond the shadow of doubt. I'm like, I
Well,
think when you
not
say
necessarily.
yeah, I'm like, I think that when you say a film is objectively bad, you are saying my statement is held up to my references.
Yes.
So it's like I have references, and if they're wrong, then so be it. Then my statement is wrong. So you're like that's something which I think is valuable because then the discussion comes into play, and then other people have to hold you to what you just said. And if you're wrong, then
Discourse.
you're wrong. Maybe your evidence doesn't hold up, but like if you're being objective, you can do that. But if the evidence changes your mind, it will probably be because either you didn't have the right information or you had a bias, and
Discourse
either vary. It depends on like your perspective. So
yeah, so like the subjective crowd will always try and pull that card of like, oh, well, you think and I know we literally talked about this earlier, but like, oh, you think your opinion is irrefutable. It's like, no, it just objectivity simply means without bias. It just means that like we're on a level playing field. It doesn't mean fucking irrefutable. It means that's the thing. It means it is refutable. If you say that's the always thing that bugs me about the like you can only like there's only subjective crowd is that the moment the moment that they make any definitive claim, they've lost. Because it's like you can't and then I'll quote Mahler. He said that's why two people using objectivity can still argue. There's really no such thing as a subjective argument because it's like I feel this way. You don't I like you, man, but you don't know me well enough to say, oh no, you don't feel that way. Like, you don't know me well enough to say that. Like, only like my family or like my friends could say that. And that's why subjective arguments are dumb because it's just why people think it's so dumb because it's like you're putting all this work in and pulling all these references only for it to just say, well, it enforces my feelings. Like, don't you want to go that extra mile and be like, yeah, this is.
well, I mean, for example, you have someone who says all film is subjective, and then they say there's no such thing as objectivity. That a film can't be objectively bad. I'm like, you are making a statement.
Only a Sith deals in
and
absolutes.
Exactly. It's like it's like you can't just say things and like if you can't say things and support them with references if you're saying everything is just down to feelings or interpretation. You're like. People, I think Fringy has said this that he does not believe that everyone thinks that everything is subjective, and I'm like I agree with that 100%. I think that just changes the goalpost on different things because his Game of Thrones video he criticized things that are problems in The Last Jedi, and it's just one of those things where it's like he probably holds a personal bias, and it's one of those things like that's fine, but it's just,
Recognize it.
yeah, you don't just double down and say everything is subjective. You're like, you
Wait,
need
Fringy
to
is on? Wait, what? What?
just right.
Oh,
That
I
was
was
in
like,
reference to just right. No,
what?
Fringy doesn't believe that everything is
Okay,
that
yeah, I was like, Fringy
he
is
doesn't
the main one.
believe
It's
that.
like,
Yeah, he doesn't believe that the people who say everything is subjective think everything is
yeah,
subjective.
yeah,
He
yeah.
thinks everyone is kidding themselves essentially to a degree,
Well,
which I agree with him on that.
I think I might agree because even, dude. Okay, I'm gonna get a little personal real quick, but like, uh, something always felt wrong about saying that because I used to be in that crowd. I used to be in the crowd of it's all down to our personal opinions. Um, and something about that just didn't feel right because I was like, but things are bad, right? It's like I remember Angry Video Game Nerd. He said that this game sucks, and he listed why. Sh- like, and then I was conflicted, and then it wasn't until um I went kind of down a dark path with really liking H Bomber Guy. And don't get me wrong, Harris can make some pretty good videos, but he can also make some bad ones. And dear God, that Dark Souls 2 video was so bad. And I absolutely loathe Dark Souls 2. I'm a big Souls fan, and I hate Dark Souls 2. And when I watched that video, I was like, oh, it's H Bomber Guy. It's my favorite. He was my favorite YouTuber. He's like, my favorite YouTuber. Maybe he can convince me wrong. And I was like, oh God, this video fucking sucks. And I was on my way to a wedding in North Carolina. It's like 9 hours from me. Jeez, now like 15 hours. Jeez, it was a long drive. And then I saw this. Yeah, it's 15 hours, and I saw this 9-hour series from this guy, this gas mask man, about why that video sucks. And I was like, interesting. I'll listen to this. And then I listened to it, and I was just like, dude, this guy gets it. Nothing's ever felt more certain to me than Mahler saying that there are truths in like quality. Uh, and then it like everything just like changed from there. I was just like, yeah, like that makes sense. Like things can be like good or bad. Like that just makes sense. And bringing this back to the head of like people who say, oh, it's all subjective, like don't even believe it. I would think I might agree because I don't even think Just Right believes his own thing because Just Right will constantly make, and Cosmonaut too. They both make statements of quality on like Mahler said it before. He said these people will use objectivity when it suits them, but when they want something defended, then they'll fall back on the safety net.
I agree with that 100%. And it's one of those things, just a shame because you're just like, I think Theo said this in the Gutian stream that we did. It's like, can't we, even if we disagree on certain things, like, can't we still just talk about it? Like, we don't even have to agree on objectivity, subjectivity. Like, we can still talk about merit and like how well things like function in the story. It's like, it doesn't have to end discussion, man. It's like, yeah, I don't know.
Mahler and Just Right had that conversation. He said Just Right said, well, maybe we should stop talking about this objective subjective thing and talk about the film that we came out here to talk about, right? Because we're not going to convince each other. And then Mahler said, well, if we can't get past that conversation, then we can't converse. And Just Right's like, why? He's like, well, because any point of contention that we bring up to you can be shaken off with, well, it's just my opinion, you have yours, and that ends. And this is what I'm bringing it around to. Mahler said, and that ends discussion. And Just Right's, well, no, it doesn't, because I can articulate my opinion to you, and you can articulate yours to me, and then we take the valuable things from it. And I'm just like, dude.
It's like it's like that you can share like how your perspective on a film. I agree with that 100%, but it's like one of those things where it's like I don't
care unless I know you
that
personally.
shouldn't be that shouldn't be exactly, that shouldn't be the central focus of like a discussion, because there are a few films like that I would love to make a video on to talk about like my experience with a film, and I might do that, like mix a little bit of objective and subjective to try to separate that out. But at the same time, it's like it's I said this in a tweet. I think it's like it's difficult to make videos like that, but at the same time, it's just like I think if you're talking about quality at any rate, or like which that discussion was about, then it's like you should not just say everything is just down to opinions, man. It's like that definitely ends discussions. So.
Well, it is, and it's funny because they'll always, because Just Right even made that video where he's like, "This is harmful discussion." I'm like, "No, this is discussion."
Oh man, this is one of the biggest regrets of my video, man. Is I said in the video that the people who support subjective criticism say that it harms art. I shouldn't have said that. I should have used. Yeah, what they do, but the wording was wrong. I should have used Just Right's exact quote. He said it in his objectivity video. His quote was exactly this. It was implicit in the two terms is a hierarchy. The idea that objectivity is better than subjectivity. The terms empower those who seek to end the discussion rather than in those who seek to encourage it. And it's what that line for me like grinds my gears every time I listen to it, because it's like that is not true.
It depends.
It's like
we can have subjective.
It does, but it's one of those things that like objectivity doesn't end discussion. I think that it's like it can support discussion.
It is discussion. Like,
it's central to everyone being able to agree with each other, which I go into that on the video where I'm like, I think that what connects everybody is just what you see on screen. Because what you see on screen is objective.
Yeah, it is what happens. Yeah. It was just another thing that the subjective crowd likes to do. Joseph Anderson made this argument once. He was like, well, if we're going to say, and Jim Sterling tried to do the same thing with his 100% objective review, quote unquote, tried to say that, well, if we're going to make an objective review, we can only say the factual things that are in the game. In Hollow Knight, there is a jump button, and you can dash, and there is this enemy that exists here. And I'm like, dude, it's much more than that. I actually wanted to make a video, on that topic, and I wanted to use a quote from Parks and Recreation where I don't know if you've ever seen that show. It's great. Where Ron Swanson he gets up and it says a speech about Leslie's mom. He's like, my speech will not be a speech of coddling her, but a speech of facts. And he gets up and he's like, she was born on this date. She has this color hair. She is Caucasian. And it's what about they say about you is true. You do work on the second floor of City Hall. I want to use that as an example of like what people like Joe think objectivity is, just a list of like blanket facts. It's like, no, like it's a little more than that. We can discuss quality. Oh goodness. But yeah, let's finish this video out. And here's the thing. We'll watch video 2 and then probably end it there because I do need to feed my cat here soon. However, I think we're going to breeze by the second video because I had almost no contention with video 2. But let's go ahead and finish this out.
Mind. The short answer is you don't. You can't change somebody else's mind. Only they can. Yep. If you try to change it, they will defend it as is. But if you can manage to express uncertainty, concede to reasonable rebuttals, state as many areas of agreement as you can, and let the other person arrive at their own conclusion on their own terms, then it's possible to change one's mind. Just remember, if your opponent's mind does change, they're the ones who changed it, not you, so to speak. All that you did was convince them to change it themselves.
Yep, you presented the evidence.
Video. Pretty well put together.
Yeah, it's decent. It's just there's the only two gripes we had with it where it's like there was one point where he was speaking in language that was incredibly general, where he should have been a little more like specific.
A little bit of framing one type of argumentation style as being bad without with context of it mattering in certain discussions. But I think if we're just talking about general rules, I think that what he said is relatively agreeable. So
yeah, it's just the context that was lacking. But this video focuses on my boy juror number 4, and that I'm sure we'll smooth through this one. Hang on. Do I need to make a new room or hold up? Or maybe we need to finish this out. Hang on. Okay, there we go. It's starting over. Hang on. I pasted it in the doodly doo.
Catch for me.
Do what now?
It didn't catch on for me. I know. I think it's restarting for you too. So.
Hang on. I punched in the video 2. Couldn't find the video through the build search in. Please paste link directly into the search bar. I did though. Let me. Hang on. Let me see if I can find it. Number 2. Shit. Hang on there, old. Watch together. What's going on? I'm actually just gonna make a new room. Hang on. Exit that one out. Make a new room. Counter arguments. 12 Angry Men. Let's see. What to Make Debates, episode 2.
Guys, Michael Bolton is here.
Oh, great. Send him in.
Oh, wow. The video they chose was Jack Sparrow with Michael Bolton. That's like fucking hilarious. This is the tale of Jack Sparrow. Oh, there we go. Got it. I don't know if you ever listened to Lonely Island. They are hilarious.
Yeah, I should.
Let me see. Boom, new one. It's got the guy from Superbad. What? No, that's actually not him.
Well, Sarah?
No, not Michael Cera, but they look alike. Shit, I cannot remember his name for the life of me, but that's
Rogen?
Okay.
Seth Rogen or
No, I'm so
third
dumb.
guy?
Andy Samberg.
Oh yeah, they do look like yeah.
Andy Samberg and Jesse Eisenberg, all three of them look alike. But him and then two of his friends just make like really funny, like Tenacious D style, like funny ass songs. But anyway, are you in?
Yeah.
Okay, we're starting episode 2, and this one's really good.
In the 1957 film 12 Angry Men, a jury must unanimously decide the fate of an 18-year-old boy on trial for murdering his father. All of the jurors are convinced that the boy is guilty, except for one, who merely claims that he isn't sure and only wants to talk about it. In the end, all of the other jurors have changed their vote from guilty to not guilty. In the first episode of this series, we observe the types of characteristics that can help you convince other people to change their mind. The type of characteristics that make a debate possible. This episode will be about the purpose of a debate and how to present your arguments. One of the first arguments to take place between two members of this jury happens when number 9 challenges number 10's reasons for finding the boy on trial guilty.
We heard the facts, didn't we? You're not going to tell me that we're supposed to believe this kid knowing what he is? Listen, I've lived among them all my life. You can't believe a word they say. You know that. I mean, they're born liars.
Only an ignorant man can believe that.
Now, consider the rationale presented and the way it was contested. Number 10's argument is that the testimony of the boy on trial cannot and should not be trusted because of his background. Number 9 clearly disagrees with this line of reasoning, but rather than arguing against the reasoning, he merely judges number 10. He challenges the man, but not the argument.
I think certain things should be pointed out to this man.
Come on, this isn't Sunday. We don't need a sermon.
Come on, we have a job to do now. Let's do it.
This does not accomplish anything. You can object to somebody's reasoning, but if you don't question or challenge the reasoning itself and challenge the person instead, you're making the debate personal.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I think sometimes it's kind of fun to like poke at someone who's like making a whataboutism or like a straw man and be like, wow, like, you know, this is what you're doing. You're making a non sequitur. Like, come on, bro, like you're dumb. But like, I agree with him. Yeah, I agree.
Compare juror number 9 with juror number 8. When he discusses the trial with number 10, he listens to him cite the testimony of a woman who lives across the street from the accused.
She looks out the window, and right across the street, she sees the kid stick the knife into his father. The time is 12:10 on the nose. Everything fits. Look, she's known the kid all his life. His window was right opposite hers across the L tracks, and she swore she saw him do it.
I'd like to ask you something. You don't believe the boy's story. How come you believe the woman's? She's one of them, too, isn't she?
Notice what number 8 does and what he does not do.
man.
He never judges number 10, he doesn't express any opinions, and he doesn't
about that
appeal to
line.
the other people in the room. All he does is question his line of reasoning. After all, number 10 argued that the boy's testimony is not credible because of his background. Number 10 also argued that the testimony of an eyewitness with the same background is credible. All that number 8 had to do was question this.
You don't believe the boy's story. How come you believe the woman's? She's one of them, too, isn't she?
You're a pretty smart fella, aren't you?
Okay, gentlemen. Now, gentlemen.
It's really that simple. If a line of reasoning contains a flaw, make the debate about that flaw. Do not make it about the person who is responsible for it. However, it's not always that simple when you're the one trying to make an argument. Later on during the deliberation, number 8 makes an argument himself, and number 12 questions him.
There was one alleged eyewitness to this killing. Someone else claims he heard the killing, saw the boy run out afterwards, and there was a lot of circumstantial evidence. But actually, those 2 witnesses were the entire case for the prosecution. Supposing they're wrong.
What do you mean, supposing they're wrong? What's the point of having witnesses at all?
Number 8's argument is that it is possible for a witness to be wrong. Number 12 does not directly address this and deflects it by asking a rhetorical question. This is where number 8 could make the mistake of addressing number 12's question. Instead, to keep the focus on his line of reasoning, he simply repeats it in the form of a question.
Could they be wrong?
What are you trying to say? Those people sat on the stand under oath.
For the second time in a row, number 12 deflects, and so...
Yeah, I think I need to learn from this, because I think I have a habit of, like, trying to, like, poke a little fun, and then that leads down a rabbit hole where it's like, oh, the debate is here. Let's go back to it. Like,
I think I struggle with that too a little bit there. Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's good to stay on topic, and again, going back to the almost like the I'm not sure thing, where it's like it can be good if you stick to that. He keeps asking the question and staying on topic rather than approaching that, because yeah, again, if you just go like, if you approach a fallacy, it's like it's going to be bad, and it's like, and it's essentially this is just deflection, and it's like you need to stay on topic. So
yeah, it sucks when you have to deal with fallacies. Like again, like why can't we just talk about the topic at hand? Again, it took me like 5 tweets to get that one guy back on track to what we were talking about, which is the throne room scene in The Last Jedi. But like, I'm trying to think of how I could have done that better. So honestly, and this is why I'm gonna do this, because this is why I wanted you here. I'm actually gonna go to my Twitter and go back down a little bit to where I was talking with that guy and see how, because this is the exact same situation that Henry Fonda's in, and I want to kind of like talk about it. I want to see if I can. Let's see. The tweet was a little bit down here. Let me see.
I'm with you, by the way, with like Twitter is not a good place to have a debate.
Which is why I always try and move it to Discord.
Like you have these like tiny little back and forths, and it's like, come on, man, like why? Like I forgot, someone said like it's like it's the argumentative equivalent of like something. Just like I forgot exactly what he said. But it's like, yeah, it's like a joke. It's like what you would just put a joke in. It's like it's not something that's very substantive. So it's like usually when I'll put a tweet, I'll try to have it have a little bit of a beginning, a middle, and an end. But I usually try not to like thread tweets, because a lot of people do that, and it can get confusing.
About that. I'm really bad about that.
Same here, and you know, there's times that I'll go past that. But yeah, just Twitter itself, man, it's like there's a reason so many people disagree with each other, because it's difficult to get your points across.
No, for sure, especially with 240 characters. If you want to go to my stream, you can see where it is. You might want to mute it so it doesn't loop back in on itself.
I've been muting it.
I have I think it's up. It says Mahler was so if we go up the rabbit hole, it was Cosmonaut talking about the dumb tweet that he
I had a few back and forths. It's funny, there were actually a few of my followers who were helping me out on that one, because there was one guy who was going after me. Like I think someone linked my objectivity video to him, and he was saying like my point was flawed. He went with the whole art is just completely subjective thing, and I had a few back and forths with him, and it was decent. I was trying to get because I said to him, I will hear out your points if
Yeah.
like if you have criticisms against my content, and he just said, this is the thing, man. If you're criticizing someone, like try to be specific. Don't just say your entire perspective is wrong. I think we kind of went over this, but it's like
Yeah,
that's one of those things where
video
it's like,
one is what video one was.
yeah.
Was going over
And
that
I
too.
was kind of telling the guy like I can't work with this stuff that you're giving me. Like you need to give me more specific points. But yeah, it's like that was something that was difficult. But man, Cosmonaut, did you see that he linked Just Right's video?
Oh
He
no!
actually he deleted it. I don't know why he did that. Maybe there was just
He
pushback, but holy cow,
knows.
he actually linked that thing saying that
Oh
he had seen the
no!
video and he thought more people should see it. I was like, oh
Oh,
no,
I have
man.
something to add on to that. A friend of mine who is on the like artist only subjective crowd, which I once stayed up till 5 in the morning arguing with. um, she linked me uh she linked me this all started because she linked me the video of Jack Satan, Eric Taxon, on like uh talking about Wolf and Mahler and like objectivity and stuff, and I was like, dude, that video is such a steaming pile of shit. Like, all they do is like strawman like Mahler and Wolf, and they just make shit up, and it's so disingenuous. Like, I've honestly like never heard Mahler like get like so frustrated to the point where he like other than his original videos, his early videos where he called Joseph Anderson a massive faggot, is like as a joke, and like his early videos were like that. But like ever since The Last Jedi, where he's been no, ever since Dark Souls 2, where he's been very like calm natured, um, I've never seen him like lash out, and this was the one time he did it because Jack said something that was like crazy disingenuous, and then Mahler said, "Yeah, Jack, kindly go fuck yourself. That is not what I am." I was like, "Whoa!" But going up the rabbit hole, um, the guy said, "Wait, you're seriously taking a small mistake in an action scene and using it as a major criticism of the film. Ha 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 ha." And I said, "Taking every small act into account, yes, whether it's major criticism or not, depending on what the act is." And then I did the car and then the knife. And here's where it starts. This is where it starts. This guy said, "Nobody shooting at Luke when he's waiting for the lightsaber R2 shot at him to fall from the sky would make Return of the Jedi bad then." And I said, I sent him two things. I said, "You clearly didn't read anything I said," and then I linked him a picture of of the definition of whataboutism. And
Uh,
here's going into episode 2 of What Makes Debates. What is it called? What to Make Debates, where Henry Fonda doesn't go down the rabbit hole of that guy where he's like, "Oh, what's the point of even having witnesses?" Henry Fonda could have said like, "What are you, stupid?" But like instead he gets back on track. Is it wrong for me? And I'm asking this as like an introspective question. Is it wrong for me to be like, "Bro, you clearly didn't read anything I said," or like maybe I should have just like gotten back on track with uh the knife scene?
I think that that's reasonable because seriously, what you were saying is like you were linking the idea of a whataboutism, and I'm like I'd agree with you on that track. The idea that like it's just you were pointing out the flaw within his argumentation, and like you added a little bit of a snarky comment in there. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that, but yeah, it's like
But here's the thing:
you
I
clearly
addressed the
were
fallacy.
noting.
I didn't address
Yes.
the point. I addressed the fallacy, which is what counter arguments is saying don't do.
Yeah, you don't go down that route. You don't try to qualify that. You can if like if they're like you can acknowledge that to talk about like what's that worth. I think that Cosmo even brought that up. He said that
Okay.
like the whole idea of him them not shooting at him. It's like I don't think that that's a flaw. It's like I think it's not like there's this massive opening for it. It's like they would be a little bit surprised. There's
Yeah,
like a
I
little
agree.
bit of a time gap in between, but it's like it's one of those things. It's not worth going into where it's just like just stick to what's on topic. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so like I told him the same thing. I was like, "Look, man, like you're wrong. Like you clearly didn't read anything I said. You're like hold up. I was like, "Look, man, like the not only did you like whataboutism me, but your whataboutism isn't even good because like he like they didn't have time to shoot at him. It's like he jumped up and then he caught the lightsaber immediately and then he went to fighting. Like it's not like he stood there with his hand up for like I don't know. We could qualify that, but let's not for now because
Yeah.
But so this guy said let's see, it's is it not warranted when criticism you use can be applied to plenty of great movies? Almost like this isn't a movie-breaking flaw. I'm like, oh my god, dude. Okay, one, yes, it can be applied to anything, but that's not what we're talking about. And two, it is a movie-breaking flaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was like, bro, can you stop making shit up and like actually argue with me? I said, you're the guy making Everest out of an anthill, calling a 2-second clip of a nice disappearing that you need to slow down to notice a major flaw. And I was like what? And then I said, once again, you clearly didn't read anything I said. Cite where I said a major flaw kills a movie. You've whataboutism. This is the tweet I was looking for. You've whataboutism my argument, and you didn't even do it correctly. And then he cited my tweet, but again, he couldn't find anything because I didn't say it. And he said, you once again have failed to cite where I said a single flaw outright kills a movie. And then he went down. Oh, it's just a joke, man. He said it's hyperbole. Jesus Christ, calm down, man. I was like, oh my god. So eventually he just like kept making shit up and kept making shit up and kept making shit up, and about me. And I was just like, okay, I'm done talking with you. Like you won't.
That's pretty solid. And like honestly, like that, you run into those people on Twitter every now and again that like just where the conversation is not fruitful. And it's clear that it's not going anywhere. Yeah, exactly. That's what that looks like there, where it's just like one of those things where he was trying to disprove you, and it's like, yeah, seriously. Do you know about the continuity error in Return of the Jedi? I think Jay brought this up in one of the.
I don't hit me.
Oh, this is really interesting. So in Return of the Jedi, there's actually a scene where Darth Vader. It's one shot in the film where Darth Vader is holding Luke's lightsaber, and then literally in the next. Yeah, you can go to the scene. Yeah, I'm not joking you. It's the scene literally right before Luke attacks Vader when he threatens Leia, and he's holding his lightsaber for no reason. And the reason that is because there was actually a deleted scene where he picked up the lightsaber and then it was brought back. Yeah, you can just look up the throne room fight.
I'm getting the scene where he like holds it. He's like, I see you've constructed a new lightsaber. Hang on.
It's late in the throne room fight. It's literally the one up from where you are. It's when he's threatening Leia.
Oh, is it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one right here.
Yeah. What one two to your right?
Right here.
Hang on. Yeah, that one. Yeah, I think you could look that up. You need to get the exact shot. You can probably go to the scene on YouTube. Oh, but yeah, like in that scene, Darth Vader is holding.
He's holding it in his left hand.
Yes. Yep. It's in there, and then in the next shot, Luke has his lightsaber magically. And it's one of those things. That's very similar to the disappearing knife in The Last Jedi, where it's like this is a continuity error which was created because of a deleted scene. That's a flaw with the film that affects the fight scene, but it's one of those things where it's like this, like it depends on how big it is. You're like, so that's affecting this fight scene because all of a sudden the stakes are changed. They change because of an editing mistake. It's the same in The Last Jedi, and it's like, you take those flaws as they come. And it's like these are both flaws in a fight scene, but it just varies.
It doesn't mean that it kills the movie. There's other things that Return of the Jedi is not good for, but and
because this is the
Cosmonaut made a great video on that.
And this is the thing because the Return of the Jedi, that fight scene holds up really well.
Is the best fight scene in all of Star Wars. I stand by that. It is the best.
Yeah, and then you go to The Last Jedi, where like the entire thing is like bending to the weight of its own like continuity breaks.
Have you seen Shadiversity's video on it?
Yes, it's really so hilarious. Like he is losing his mind. I stood by that fight being relatively well put together. Like that was one of the videos I did on my. Yeah, that was one of my videos on the old channel that I had. I praised a lot of the choreography. I said that it felt more like, rhythmic. It didn't feel like they were fighting, more like they were dancing. But at the same time, like the more I've seen it and the more I've watched like different breakdowns of it, I'm like, this is really bad.
Yeah,
Like
and
this
that's
is
what
really
yeah,
bad.
and that's what people kept trying to argue with me. They were like, oh God, there was somebody I blocked because he wouldn't stop making shit up about me. But this one guy was like yeah, it's really not that big a deal. It's just like one flaw, and I'm like, no, dude, like you need to pay attention more. Like there's so
One
much.
flaw doesn't break a movie, but like a movie can have several of flaws like that, and then they do enter the realm of breaking the film. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Going up the rabbit hole,
Yeah.
which is fine. It's just conversation. You know, it's like the 11-hour podcast, quote unquote, on Jenny Nicholson. Like they all thought, oh, they spent 11 hours talking about Jenny Nicholson. It's like no, they went off and talked about different things. Like there was one EFAP where like they started going to the very edge of like conversation where they went down to the base philosophy of like, can you know things? And like because like all conversations, if dug deep enough, will get down to philosophy. It'll get down to, can we know things? um which
It's
yes, you
good to
can.
have Theo for those discussions.
But going up the rabbit hole, juror number, I think 11 was it? Yeah, juror number 11 was like, made this kind of like non sequitur. I was like, bruh, can we? Why even have him? And I think that there's something for me personally to learn here, where I don't know, maybe you can offer your opinion here, um, where instead of like attacking the fallacy, bringing it back to the point like juror number 8 does, like how I did with that guy. I attacked the fallacy. I didn't go back to the point. What do you think?
I think both can be productive. It just depends. Because like Henry Fonda in this case could like talk about that, but it's one of those things where it's going to lead down on a trail, and this guy might disagree with some of the things on there, but like you can point those out and that might help. But I think I agree with you, whereas this is one of those things which would probably help me out in conversations more, is keeping things on topic. But I make videos that kind of tackle like fallacies that are used in argumentation in
Your What About
videos.
This video was great.
Yeah, thank you. It's one of those things that I like tackling in it. Like I've said this before. It's like I almost made my channel just to link videos whenever just people bring up whataboutisms. I'm like, I made a video disproving this entire fallacy. Just
that's why Mueller
check
was
that
on
out. Let's
YouTube as well. He was like, dude, I just hate like what's on the market.
But it's one of those things. I agree with him where I'm like, I think that's probably more productive, at least to the debate, which I think he's talking about right here, is staying on topic and bringing it back. Yes, I'd agree with there. But yeah, again, one of those things that I think is probably where a lot of our issues might come down to this, is just that a lot of this is going to be based on context. In this case, I definitely agree with what your number 8's strategy is, which is going back. But yeah, it depends.
The conversation off topic for sure. No, I agree. Yeah. Do you have anything else?
Particular, we can go.
So, for a second time in a row, number 8 asks the question. This time, number 12 provides an answer.
Play for you?
They're only people. People make mistakes. Could they be wrong?
No.
Okay, I'm on 430. Should we refresh?
I'm on 426 still.
Okay.
I'm gonna go back.
I'm gonna go back to 426 as well. Where are you now?
422.
I'm on 420. Hang on. I'm gonna play it.
What are you trying to say? Those people
I'll
sat
give
on
it a try. Let's see if it plays here.
I am now on 422.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Play it for me?
Yeah, give it a play. Yeah.
No, I actually want you to do it. I got none.
Hit play and nothing happened.
You hit play and nothing happened? Interesting. Then I will try it. Boom. Oh no, I went back to the front. What were we on? 422?
Out the window.
422.
Wrong. What's the point of having witnesses at all?
Number 8's argument.
You with me? I'm at 338.
38? No. I went back to 423.
Okay, so I've never really used Watch Together too much. How do we fix this?
I don't know. I could just give it a refresh, see where that puts me.
Well.
Hang on. We were on 422. We know that, so.
Because this video talks about juror number 4, and it's like, that guy. I refreshed it, and interesting. I don't even know if I see you in the room. Hang on.
But yeah, I was about to say. I think.
No,
Wait, no.
It says you're in.
Yeah.
I just.
What's it looking at for you?
I just. You can check the stream. It's just the black screen.
Yeah, I'm getting nothing too.
Should we remake it?
Sure.
Okay. Do you want to host this time?
Just throw it. I can't. This is a bizarre problem, but I cannot, like, for whatever reason, I cannot put a link. I cannot paste a link into a chat. It's the strangest thing. I don't know why that is. Huh. Yeah.
You can't just Control V?
Well, I can Control V words. I just can't Control V a link for some reason. I don't know what's the deal there. So.
Okay. Interesting. Are you on Windows 10?
It might be a glitch. I think that's because I can't download the apps. There's something wrong with that too. I need to figure out how to put that on. But
there's the Watch Together app.
Or for the program. Lord forbid, I do not know the language.
Okay, I've got the room. I'm going to send it to you on the old Discord.
Okay, I got it. Right. I will not touch it. You can drag.
Simple. When you're the one.
So we were on 422.
This is.
Oh, come on, nobody can.
12 provides an answer.
They're only people. People make mistakes.
Number 12 deflects, and so for a second time in a row, number 8 asks the question. This time, number 12 provides an answer.
They're only people. People make mistakes. Could they be wrong?
Well, no, I don't think so.
You know so.
Oh, come on, nobody can know a thing like that. This isn't an exact science.
That's right, it isn't.
Get him, Fonda.
It's easy for a debate to become a mess, and one of the reasons why is because they usually don't stay focused. If you raise a point and somebody responds by raising an irrelevant point, whatever point you were trying to make will likely be forgotten if you challenge the irrelevant point instead. You'll be arguing on somebody else's terms rather than your own. This is why it would have been a mistake for number 8 to answer any of number 12's questions. Number 8 was not arguing that there is no point in having witnesses, nor was he arguing that the witnesses were lying under oath. He was merely arguing that the witnesses are fallible. Whether done intentionally or unintentionally, each time somebody deflects, make sure the debate stays focused on your point, at least until it's been properly questioned, challenged, or granted.
Supposing they're wrong.
And that relates to what he was talking about in the first video too, where he essentially agreed with juror number 11, but at the same time he wanted to stay on topic, which is why he kept asking. So yeah. And that's why he didn't pursue the issue, because he's like, yeah, I agree with you. Witnesses can be fallible. It's like, there you go.
Also, juror number 11 is the most like flip-floppy out of all of them.
Yeah,
he changes his mind like 3 times. In fact, a whole video is dedicated to that. I'm pretty sure a whole video is dedicated. Maybe it's not, but yeah, he does go over it in this series. But yeah, you're absolutely right. He does mention that, and it correlates back to the first one. You can go ahead and play it.
What's the point of having witnesses at all?
Could they be wrong?
What are you trying to say? Those people sat on the stand under oath.
They're only people. People make mistakes. Could they be wrong?
Well, no, I don't think so.
You know so.
Nobody can know a thing like that. This isn't an exact science.
That's right, it isn't.
Thankfully, this doesn't always happen. Sometimes, when you make a point, someone on the other side of the debate will deflect, but other times they do not. They address your reasoning with their own line of reasoning.
Let us assume that the boy really did commit the murder. Now, this happened at 10 minutes after 12. Now, how was he caught by the police? He came back home at 3 o'clock or so, and he was captured by 2 detectives in the hallway of his house. Now, my question is, if he really had killed his father, why would he come back home 3 hours later? Wouldn't he be afraid of being caught?
Number 11 has questioned the guilt of the boy on trial, and number 4 addresses this. Notice how each man directly addresses the other's reasoning.
The boy knew the knife could be identified as the one he had just bought. He had to get it before the police did.
But if he knew the knife could be identified, why did he leave it there in the first place?
Well, I think we can assume the boy ran out in a state of panic after having just killed his father. When he finally calmed down, he realized he had left his knife there.
This then depends on your definition of panic. He would have had to be calm enough to see to it that there were no fingerprints left on the knife.
Oh my god, this is like cathartic
where
for
did
me.
this
Hell
panic
yes.
start? Where did it end?
Now this is a debate. Number 11 states his reasons for being...
I actually don't think cathartic was the right adjective. Excuse me. Whatever the adjective is. Something that this is like, this is, yes! Like, that's fucking debate. Yes, that is it. You don't go off on these non sequiturs. You look at it. Why would the boy come back? To retrieve the knife. Then why would he do that? Well, because he did this. And then it's just like, that's discourse, man. Like that's discourse. Oh man.
Yeah. Provide different perspectives, and you have points to support it. So yeah.
I'm actually full screen. Can you pause it? Can you play it for me? Excuse me.
Yeah.
Skeptical of the boy's guilt, and number 4 acknowledges each reason by providing a plausible explanation. There is no judging or deflecting taking place between these two men. They are having a proper debate. When this happens, there is no need to repeat your point over and over and over again. If your opponent stays focused and they properly challenge your points, the debate should be made into an inquiry. Notice how number 11 does not contradict number 4 with an opposing point, but rather presents the opposing points in the form of a question. This not only allows number 11 to challenge number 4 rhetorically, it invites number 4 to provide a rebuttal.
Look, you voted guilty. What side are you on?
And then juror number 3 spoils this debate by questioning number 11's loyalty rather than his reasoning.
Look, you voted guilty. What side are you on?
I don't believe I have to be loyal to one side or the other. I'm simply asking questions.
The debate continues, but because number 3 deflected this particular question, it remains unanswered. Thus, number 11 remains skeptical.
Well, if I were the boy and I'd done the stabbing and everything, I'd take a chance and go back with the knife. I'll bet he figured that nobody had seen him running out. I'll bet he figured nobody'd find the body the next day.
Pardon. The woman across the street testified that the moment after she saw the killing, she screamed. Now, the boy certainly must have heard the scream. So he knew that somebody saw something. I just don't think that he would have gone back.
2 things. 1, in his state of panic, he may not have heard the scream. Perhaps it wasn't very loud. 2, if he did hear it, he may not have connected it with his own act. Remember, he lived in a neighborhood where screams were fairly commonplace.
There's your answer.
By missing the point, number 12 set a bad example, and by being tribal, number 3 set a bad example, but number 4 set a good example of how to address a line of reasoning, and number 11 set a good example of how to question a line of reasoning. Each time his skepticism is challenged by number 4, number 11 posits another question. Now that we know what a productive debate looks like, in which questions are posited, reasons are given, and all individuals stay focused on the points being made, let's observe a debate that takes place between, arguably, the 2 most competent and respectable debaters among the jurors, number 4 and number 8. Both men are intelligent, restrained, and willing to acknowledge a reasonable point if the other man should make it. Just as number 11 had earlier expressed skepticism and posited questions to number 4, so too does number 8 express his skepticism on a particular matter and posits his own questions to number 4.
After the boy claimed he'd been at the movies during the hours that the killing took place, couldn't remember the names of the movies or the
Oh, this is so good.
Yep.
This gentleman here has brought that point in here several times.
That's correct. It's the only alibi the boy offered, and he himself couldn't back it up with any details at all.
Putting yourself in the boy's place, do you think you could remember details after an upsetting experience such as being slapped in the face by your father?
I think so. Is there any special details to remember?
According to the police testimony in court, the boy was questioned by the detectives in the kitchen of his apartment, while the body of his father was lying on the floor in the bedroom. Do you think you could remember details under those circumstances?
I do.
Under great emotional stress?
Under great emotional stress.
Number 4 has argued that it's not unreasonable to expect somebody to remember significant details from recent events, even under great emotional stress. Number 8 does not agree with this argument, but you'll notice that he never outright states his argument. He states a series of facts and asks number 4 a series of questions, all of which number 4 confidently answers. So, what does number 8 do next? Does he tell number 4 that he disagrees with him now? he doesn't. He gives number 4 the opportunity to prove his point.
I'd like to ask you a personal question.
Go ahead.
Where were you last night?
Oh man, that's so awesome. Like,
Yes.
directly challenging them because you know they're wrong, so that they'll crumple under themselves, which is what happens. But number 4 doesn't take it as anything personal. He's just like, shit, man, I got beat at my own game. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, like
Where
if you were to
you,
argue with someone, like, well, let's take The Last Jedi because it's such a great example. You would ask them the question. It's like, okay, so because Mueller does this just right. He's in just right crumples. Because he's like, okay, so why didn't they send 2 Star Destroyers ahead in hyperspace, turn around hyperspace back, and pincer attack them? We know that they can do it. Why didn't they do it? And he asked them the question. He says, why don't they do X? And he's just like, yeah, I don't know. Like, that's, yeah, you let them crumple under their own. Like, it's so good.
How about the night before that?
Come on, what is this?
No, that's all right.
Come on, what is this?
No, that's all right.
Juror number 4 is about to set another good example of another thing that a debate ought to be. A sport. When number 4 realizes that he is being challenged, he doesn't try to weasel away or walk his point back. No, he has the courage of his convictions to accept the challenge. Sportsmanlike. He knows he made an argument. He knows it's being challenged. He knows that he now has to defend it.
I left the office at 8:30 and went straight home and to bed. And the night before that? My wife and I went to the movies. What did you see? The Scarlet Circle. It is a very clever whodunit. What was the second feature? The remarkable Mrs. Something, the Mrs. Bainbridge, the remarkable Mrs. Bainbridge.
I saw that. It's called The Amazing Mrs. Bainbridge.
Yes, The Amazing Mrs. Bainbridge. I think that's right.
And you weren't under an emotional stress, were you?
Ooh, look at that.
Sweating. Oh man. He said he didn't sweat
This
too, right?
was a civil and classy confrontation.
Oh, man,
Number
that's
4
so
made an
good.
argument. Number 8 politely challenged it. Number 4 accepted the challenge. And when he proves unable to meet the standard that he himself established, he admits it. And number 8 quietly sits back down. Just like in a sport, when 2 athletes engage.
Fucking discourse. That is objectivity. that is discourse. We exchange information, and then someone comes out on top. And if you can't come out on top anymore, you just go, yep, you're right. It's just like that mechanic I fucking hate in Smash. I hate it, and I also like had a decent argument as to why it is like poorly designed. And then someone like pointed, so my argument was that this other Smash game doesn't have this mechanic, therefore this game is better. So I was talking about I don't know if you ever played Smash Bros, but have you played Smash Bros before?
Casually though.
Okay, so you know about the ledge. You hang on the ledge and then you can get up and whatever, right? Hello?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you just cut out for a sec. There's a mechanic in the new Smash games that I really hate that gives you an opportunity to hit someone when they grab the ledge. And then even after they've correctly spaced the recovery properly. And then he was like, bro, it's still a thing in the older Smash games. I'm like, no, it isn't. If you space properly in that game, it doesn't happen. They're like, no, it still happens in those old games. And then they showed it to me and I was like, oh shit, I'm completely wrong. And then I was just like, yeah, damn man, it's like, so if you hate this mechanic in this game, you should hate it in this game. So and then they tried to pull a whataboutism. They're like, well, if you hate it, it's therefore it's a good mechanic. And I'm like, no, it just means it's a shit mechanic in both games. But yeah, that's fucking discourse. Information is presented. It is either correct or it isn't, and then we make a conclusion and then we move on. It's what Molly even said the same thing. It's just it's what makes discussion so fascinating. It's just we're trying to get to the bottom of a topic, and it's whoever is the best research wins. It's just number 4 and number 8's conversation. It's why I love number 4 so much. Just he's using a process. He's every time he opens his mouth, he's unless it's to score number 10, he's yes for X and Y reasons. It's not oh, what are you talking about, yo man? It's yes or no because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm just Yes.
He's very thought out. He knows exactly why he thinks the way he does, and he has reasons for it. It's not like he's the one person who has absolutely no biases. Like he was very much listening in the court to everything that was being said. So yeah.
Yeah, that's just like that's it. That's why he's my fucking Discord profile picture. Like he's a beast. Like that's he's a microcosm of what discourse should be. Ugh, that was
100%, yeah.
that was like, whew, that was awesome for me to listen to.
Engage in a match, they accept the confrontation with the understanding that one will win and one will lose, and when it's over, it's over. No taunting, no gloating, no unnecessary confrontation. Both sides yield. These are the sorts of ways in which a debate should be fashioned. Debates and arguments are typically stigmatized, and often for these reasons. They tend to become personal, they tend to lose their focus, they tend to become tribal and mean-spirited along the way. But if you can manage to make a debate strictly about your opponent's reasoning, keep the conversation focused, make inquiries of your opponent, and treat the discussion as you would a sport, then the debate is much more likely to be fruitful.
Absolutely.
And you will be much more likely to win your opponent over to your way of thinking.
Mwah, like putting the finishing touches on like a chef, like on a meal. Like yes.
Excellent video, man. Yeah, holy
yeah.
cow. I need to rewatch this movie, man. I swear I said it. What?
It's on Amazon Prime. Do you have that?
Oh yeah, and I own the Blu-ray, but yeah, that's one of those things, man, where it's just, I love this movie so much because it just that's why I said that. Is I'm like, first of all, it's like I think that's a reasonable point to make. A lot of people say that, like, what's a movie without flaws? Like, you can pick simple movies. I think that there are films which are complicated, which also are really well put together. But like 12 Angry Men, you're just like, what's there in the way of flaws? Like you said, maybe the opening has a little bit of,
I'm interested
unnecessary
in to hear your
dialogue.
Whenever you rewatch it. Very interested.
I'd have to pay attention to the dialogue. I from what I remembered, it was just setting things up. But if it's just jabbering, I'm just like, like I said, I don't know if I'd call it a flaw necessarily, but still, I'd be willing to say that's something at least. But man, just 98% of this movie is like perfect. Like what? Yeah. Yes, it's so freaking well put together on just like every single level imaginable. So yeah, that's why I'd call it a movie with no flaws. So yeah.
The last time I watched the movie was like in 6th grade, like a long time ago. Like, and then I said this earlier when we first started the stream, but you mentioned it, and then I was like, hey, I want to rewatch this, and then I was just like, God dang, this is sick. Like, this is so good. Like, oh man, like, what a great, like, and especially when I was talking about how like the second video of the series is like something we both just like are probably going to completely agree with, just because like, yeah, like number 4 and number 8 are just like, they're just doing their thing, and it's just like, yes, that's it, that's fucking it. Evan, what kind of, did you build your own computer?
No, I do everything from a laptop, man. I'm hoping to build a PC this summer, but
nice.
Yeah,
I
don't have any particular computer.
A GPU to like, like, I don't know if you play games or anything.
I'm not a gamer, man. It's funny. I'm so illiterate when it comes to games. It's like I've played a few casually, but like I've never owned a system, and I barely know anything about gaming. But yeah.
Well, if you build your PC, you should give some games a try. I actually wanted to ask you, would you consider yourself a cinephile?
Yeah, to a decent degree. It's I watch a lot of movies. I obviously I make the videos for it, but yeah, it's one of those things. I enjoy movies pretty much on every level, and I've watched all sorts of them. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I know a decent bit about filmmaking. So like, for example, like when I first watched my first esport documentary, like not mine, but like an esport documentary. I was watching it, and like the whole time I was watching it, I was like, dude, I can do this. Like, I know like everything to do here, and I got myself a DSLR and kind of just tried to go after it.
Deal.
Routing that back around, I want to try and start watching more movies this upcoming, I guess, decade, but this upcoming year. I definitely want to like start watching more movies, because I find myself in conversations so many times, whether it's like at work or if it's like, wherever it is, of people going like, "Oh, bro, you haven't seen this movie? Like that's crazy. How have you not seen this movie?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, my bad." Like the Marvel movies. Like, dude, I'm like, there's so many Marvel movies I haven't seen.
Yeah. I always say that you can't see them all. Like, 'cause I always love that they're like, you haven't seen this, and I'm like, come on, man. I'm like, I've seen a lot of movies. It's like it's one of those things where it's like, there's a lot of movies that are worth recommending, but yeah, it's you just gotta watch what you can because yeah, there's so many movies out there. It's like if you just watch movies like literally like if that's all you do with your time all your life, you wouldn't get anywhere close to watching all
Oh
the
yeah.
movies that have come out, period. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, for sure. But I'm trying to at least hit, like, I'm trying to get all the Marvel movies for sure. Um, I there's a lot of like old movies, like this is kind of a meme at this point, but Citizen Kane. Uh, Plinkett talks up and down about how that's like the best movie ever made. Um, I
Good. Yeah,
want,
it's solid.
you know, there's stuff just like other single title stuff like like Whiplash. Just like anytime someone says like, "Oh, bro, you haven't seen this movie," like I want to like I need to like write it down because there's like frick, dude, there's a lot of like movies and TV shows that I need to watch, and I just always end up just like playing a game while listening to a podcast, mainly you normally EFAP. But yeah, I'm interested in watching more films this year. If you got, and I see you recommending them all the time on your Twitter, so I'll try and scoop up some of the ones that you recommend.
Yeah.
But Evan, it's been a pleasure discussing this with you. Actually, I think I learned a decent bit about like our argumentation styles, and I think the biggest takeaway I got from this was trying to steer clear of the rabbit hole, as many rabbit holes as we go down. But like especially when it comes to argumentation, um, and the themes. Uh, but would you like to like plug your channel? I mean, there we actually have like a couple people watching.
Sorry, what was that? What was the question?
Would you like to plug your channel? We have some people watching.
Oh yeah. I my channel's just my name, Evan Monroe. I make topical videos on movies. Like it's in my my strip image. I make videos that are on movies and argumentation made on movies. So yeah, it's just something that I'll make a video like using examples from films to prove a point, and I like making arguments that are well founded. So yeah.
I actually just linked your YouTube channel in the Twitch chat. It's funny. I pulled up your YouTube channel and it's God. The fact that you have 1,000 subscribers is bananas to me. But it says I talk about movies and people who talk about movies. It's like yeah,
Yeah.
like just
We'll
man,
stick with
like
that.
I'm just gonna like gush about you for a sec, but like your videos are just they're insane quality. Even Mahler was kind of gushing about your the quality of your objectivity video because like he like paused it for a second. And he was like, bro, like look at how he's editing the music to go with the film, and I was just like, yeah, like this guy is like I don't know, man. Like I just think it's criminal, like how underrated your videos are. Like you're insane. I hope Mahler picks you up for a podcast one day and you get like a shit ton of subscribers because like you definitely deserve it.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I've just doing what I can. I'm mainly doing it for fun right now, and yeah, looking forward to EFAP if they ever invite me on. But yeah.
Dude, they definitely need to. I know Southpaw's been on there, and I know you hang out with Southpaw a lot. But anyway, it was super nice to meet you. It was an honor. Love your stuff. Thanks for the insights. And thanks for like coming on and discussing maybe some of the things that I had maybe gotten wrong, like about the context stuff. And just having some bloody fun conversations about making fun of people that think that art is only subjective.
Yeah. All right.
I'm gonna dip
100%.
because
Glad to be on.
I am an hour late in feeding my cat, so I am gonna dip out. Animal abuse. But I will dip out. Evan, it was awesome and it was an honor. Later, bro. Goodbye, chat.